to the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. We're going to have to do that again.
Yes.
Welcome to the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Trish.
And this is our podcast. We talk about wrestling news and various topics from different promotions, primarily AEW, but also New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, and topics from around the wrestling world. Whatever we find interesting, and we hope you will too. We are a proud member of the Social Suplex Podcast Network, and you can find our content on our podcast feed, the Social Suplex Podcast feed, as well as on Twitter, YouTube, and Blue Sky. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and rate our podcast. We also have a store at Chopped Tees, so if you would like to support us or just own a really cool quality piece of Trish and Sarah clothing, please take a look at chopped-tees.com/collections/social-suplex-network. And this is a good time to notice that Chopped Tees is also having a Black Friday sale to celebrate American Thanksgiving. The sale runs from Wednesday, 27th November at 12 a.m. Eastern Time to Thursday, 5th December at 12 a.m. Eastern Time. So this will basically be a week after the morning after next week's Dynamite. And everything at Chopped Tees will be discounted, although the amount of the discount will be different depending on the type of items, and there's no promo codes required. Trish will have more info about this at the end of our show, and just to point out that all Chopped Tees merch, not just Trish and Sarah merch, will be included in the sale. So please go feel free to check them out for Black Friday. It is Sunday, November 24th, 2024, and we are back in the studio after a brief hiatus to talk about all things wrestling, and we're kicking things off today with Full Gear thoughts. Last night, AEW aired the pay-per-view Full Gear from Newark, New Jersey, where we had quite a number of interesting matches and maybe a couple of not so interesting ones. Trish, what are your thoughts about Full Gear?
Get match the TV, really. It's not a boring answer. No, so there was some good matches.
Yes.
There was some standard, and there was some that under-delivered, and some of the coherence around it wasn't there, and it overlaps quite a lot. And that's kind of match the TV in the last few months. I did think that Mercedes and Statlander was the best match of the evening. And probably Mercedes' best match since she came into AEW.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that's where she's really strong, you know, when she's in the ring with somebody that's really competent, and Stat is one of the best in-ring workers in the division.
Yes.
Then you get the right results out of her. Is everything else kind of comes into question sometimes with the skits and the promos. But in terms of that match, yeah, I think they got that one spot on. And that's what she's there for. You know, that's what you're paying it for. That's what she's there to deliver. And it's always good when Chris gets a spotlight, because I struggle to remember, you know, recent years, her not being able to execute in that thing. Even especially after she had the kind of unearned face turn, whatever you want to call it. And then this whole thing more focused on the kind of speed run of the Camille story than it has on her. So, yeah, I thought they really kind of delivered on that. Shall we... We're not very good at recaps, so we're not going to do it. There's plenty of them. I've listened to 5 today. So should we just... should we start with... so what did you enjoy from the pay-per-view before we talk about some overall themes?
So I really liked Statlander and Mercedes. I really liked Mercedes and Willow's match, but I thought Statlander and Mercedes was the most I've enjoyed Mercedes. And I know there were people that were like, oh, I don't like the NXT kick-out face, but I just the more angry Mercedes got at every Statlander kick-out, the happier I got. I just thought it just pleased me. She would just start screaming, and I was like, oh, she's a spoiled brat, and she's so mad. I loved that. I liked Ospreay versus Fletcher. I thought the violence was at the level of what the feud actually matched for once, as opposed to... It felt like more than a standard Ospreay kind of exhibition match, I guess, that we usually see at these pay-per-views. It felt like there were actual emotional stakes on this. And I really, really liked Mox versus OC as a match. Okay. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was probably equal to their first match at All Out last year. Just in terms of the violence, I just think they're very good foils for each other. Those were probably my 3 favorites.
Okay, so you obviously it's well known that Orange Cassidy is one of your shall we say special little guys?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I was very interested. You know, we haven't spoken as much as we normally would with you being away and me being back to playing with trains. But what's kind of been your overall thoughts on the Cassidy Moxley program overall?
So I definitely liked this more than I think other people did, but I was kind of disappointed in the ending.
Okay.
I was disappointed this week with their Dynamite stuff, and I was kind of like, well, I'm willing to wait and see what happens on Saturday because, depending on how they finish off the feud at the pay-per-view, that'll affect how I look back on what happened at Dynamite. But I was disappointed that they didn't pull the trigger on Wheeler Yuta. I thought that essentially Orange lost the match, and then I think we're going to talk about the post-match stuff, but he sort of became an afterthought, as soon as the match was over with, and I thought it just didn't work as well. I thought the match, the feud in general, started off really strong for me, right? It wasn't perfect, but I was interested in it. It was kind of the thing that was kind of keeping me coming back after a period of time where I was just not as interested in what was going on Dynamite. So I thought it started off strong. It started off interesting. It started off with a larger cast of characters, and then it just kind of narrowed. And I was really surprised at how I felt like the feud started with the most violence at the beginning, right?
Yes.
They went from breaking Bryan Danielson's neck to breaking Chuck Taylor's neck, and then last Wednesday we just had light taunting in the ring, and I was kind of like, you have to sell me that these guys are really, really, really dangerous, and you were doing a really good job of that, and then you kind of stopped doing that, and I don't know why, right? And I was kind of thinking to myself, I was okay with OC losing the feud and losing the match because I thought that the Yuta stuff would get a payoff and that would be more valuable. It doesn't matter that Yuta didn't win, that OC didn't win the championship if the Yuta stuff comes to fruition, because that's probably what he cares about more, at least from a character standpoint, right? His friendships are more important to him. But that didn't pay off either. So it was kind of like a little bit of a wet fart. I thought the match was much I feel like if they had stopped the build up to this feud after that Philly collision, it would have been perfect, and I would have been very happy with everything they did. The last couple of weeks, it almost felt like they had too much time, which is kind of funny because for most AEW feuds, you feel like they don't have enough time, and this was one of the few that I was like, oh, they really could have cut a couple of weeks out of this.
Yeah, and it kind of, the match kind of structure kind of reflects that as well. So you have this kind of dangerous feel of Moxley for a large part of it. And in the end, it's kind of the cheap finish where he's not responsible for kind of ending OC.
Right.
And maybe some of that's kind of you kind of head booking that you think you're going to make him this dangerous guy, he's going to destroy him, and then he has to come back, or he goes dark, or he has character change, or whatever it may be. And instead it's like Utah's responsible for Orange Cassidy's defeat. So it's not Moxley that's destroyed him. He's escaped in some way, and I think we thought the Moxley character would be slightly different. And that's maybe how it started out, but you can see how they may have started out with ideas, but there wasn't a clear plot point to go all the way through this.
Right.
And you can definitely tell that from the post-match. So this match, right? I didn't think we were going to be able to talk about this week. I thought this was going to be for a couple of weeks. I thought they're not going to do this on this show. And then they did, and I was like, okay. So the post-match, I completely agree that they made Cassidy look like an afterthought. And I didn't think that was great for thinking about what he does in future or moving forward.
Yeah.
But what did you think of the post-match? I was seeing this was starting at the top.
It was a little bit odd. I didn't mind so much that Mox needed Yuta's help to beat Orange. I thought that I didn't hate that because it does make sense to some degree to me. But Orange has beaten all these guys before, which is something I was sort of frustrated they didn't play up more in the lead up to this, right? That was something they talked about briefly and then really never got back into it. It was sort of similar to the way that the threads of Private Party and Daniel Garcia kind of got forgotten about in this. I just thought it was a weird ending. It was a weird ending. What a weird group of guys to come out and what a weird way to, here's Hangman, the heel, the evil, horrible heel. Why does Hangman care about Christian Cage? We haven't been given anything on that. They had a tag match together, but they didn't seem to be getting along during it. Why does Hangman care about what Orange is doing or Moxley right now? Does he want a title shot? That doesn't seem like it's been something he's cared about. Same with Jay. Jay kind of talked about the title shot a little bit, but why is he? I guess that one kind of makes a little bit more sense when you think about the Christian thing. But again, the Christian stuff hasn't been that big of a factor for Jay recently. it just all seemed very, very strange and very, very weirdly put together. And I'm frustrated by yet another fucking pay-per-view ending to remind me that Christian has this extremely shitty Money in the Bank ripoff gimmick that I don't like and that I don't want him to have.
How much trouble do I want to get in today? Let's do it.
Right. Well, let's go, because I have a lot to say about this.
Cool. Right, so let's walk through all of them. So, yeah, the Adam Page stuff works better if you want that pop of the face-off. If he doesn't lose early in the night and look like a loser.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, why is he here? He can't be chasing a title shot. He's not won a sanctioned singles match, of any value in 18 months clean. So, which is it's a whole nother kettle of fish. But... So you think, why is he here? That doesn't make any sense. And then you have this fact that he's like a heel with no face tendencies currently, who thinks he's beyond redemption. So why would he be out there to stop Mox if he's done a deal with Christian? Because I don't always agree that I think the title has always been involved. It was always involved with Swerve. He believes it's his. It's been involved with Moxley. It was involved, all the way since he lost it to
That's
Punk.
fair.
I think it's always been part of it, but you know what the problem is with Page is that he's a mute. He doesn't get to talk.
No.
As we've seen, since Grand Slam, I think he's had 2 minutes of live promo time, which is the correct measure of who's important on Dynamite, if you ever want to work that out. Not shiny belts. It's generally live mic time's a good indicator. So we've not had an explanation. And we really need one. And obviously, because he's going to be with Moxley, at least he's going to get an explanation.
Yes.
But you need to make that kind of really strong. And then you need to find a way of getting him into this match. So this is going to be a 4-way at World's End.
Yes.
I think most people know that now. It's kind of been out a few days. Moxley, Christian, Jay, and Hangman. So you have to find a reason for him to be in a world title match, being that he's not won a single match sanctioned of, other than jobbers for 18 months. And he's just been beaten twice clean by Jay White.
Right.
And, which is... I saw, I think Sean Ross Sapp today said, it's good that he doesn't have any ego. And I was like, God, I wish this guy had an ego. He's the only person to put someone over twice in a row on pay-per-view without a stipulation or without a shortcut. Twice. Actually, he's the only person to do it once, but he's actually done it twice now. So that tells you about kind of him and his gatekeeper role. But yeah, you've got to make that feel earned. So that's going to be an interesting one. You've also got the problem of, although he is a heel, he will be the most over babyface in this program. And you could feel that yesterday. And we could see that coming because the way this feud's been built, it's not helped Jay. He's got kind of an unknown face turn. They've not had any live promos together or anything like that. And, especially New Jersey, which is a little bit of half Hangman country, you could see it coming. We knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And we knew that was going to be a struggle in terms of getting heat as well because they're kind of in the wrong kind of positions or alignments, whatever you want to look at it. So I didn't think that was unexpected, but that is going to get worse. And it's going to get worse as well because of the Blue Sky stuff. I saw Leaves His Plant sign yesterday.
Everywhere.
It was all over. They're asking everyone on their podcasts, their radio shows, and I'm like, oh no, he's going to get over again through Blue Sky. But yeah, you've got to sort that out and you need to be careful with it because if this guy's lost so much. Traditionally, what you do is then have him get all his wins back, which is kind of what Moxley's doing. He's beat Cassidy after he put Cassidy over.
Yep.
He put Jay White over in the C2 last year. He put Hangman over. Well, he's going to get all them wins back. And traditionally, that's what you do. So that person goes to the top, and then they get you pay it back. And if you are not doing that at Page, and all indications are that they're not doing that with Page, then you're going to have to be very, very careful because when that doesn't happen, people are going to realise that this is just a way to get him out of the way.
Yes.
And that never goes well. And, we've cut his momentum off twice this year and everyone's kind of aware now. They can see that his booking is very convoluted and that the whole kind of I'm going to get revenge on anyone that kept me from Swerve is now completely out. And it's just now he's into the Moxie story or the Jay White story. Jay White, so the Christian thing. I think the most important thing to remember is that Hangman and Jay White match happened on a Collision that was watched by, I think, 200 and something thousand people because it was opposite WWE pay-per-view.
Yep.
Direct, it was Money in the Bank. So no one saw that. And when he came back and did the promo, he didn't refer to Christian, he referred to some other person that stopped me. Most people thought it was Max, in fact, that he had to get revenge over. So we've never made that clear. So then when it happened, everyone was just like, I've got no idea what's going on. None. And it's all right saying, I've seen so many people write out explanations today. Well, haven't you seen this? It's like half the audience doesn't even go near Collision. Half the audience worldwide doesn't even have Collision.
Right.
And this has never been explained more than that. So no, not everybody does know what was going on. Not everyone in the arena knew what was going on. And the fact that Hangman came out first to stop like that doesn't make any sense. And this is supposed to be a volatile, violent character, and yet apparently he's working for Christian Cage. This heel character's done, by the way. This heel character's done. We said it would be. I think that's a big shame. They've wasted probably the most interesting heel character they've produced in a very long time.
Yeah.
It's done. He's not a threat to anybody. So, onto face turn material. My rabbit is trying to make the most noise possible, by the way.
He's also agitated by hearing
He is. He's agitated about me going on about it for the 20th time, but it's important. So they've not told the audience this. So I don't want to see, carry on lecturing people. It doesn't change anything. It means that if you are, what's the politics rule? If you're explaining, you've already lost.
Yeah.
Right? That's exactly what this is. If you're explaining, you've lost already. And then Christian. Right. So yes, this Money in the Bank thing, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I hate the whole idea of it. I hate the kind of hanging over everything. I don't think he's a world champion or should be a world champion in AEW.
Nope.
I think the character in terms of this father thing is now kind of on its downturn compared to how hot it was in the past. And quite frankly, the person who pitched that he should win this belt should be shot into the sun. Yep. And any promises Tony's made to him about winning this belt should also be shot into the sun.
Yep.
And I don't care. And if you think that... The thing is that they're talking about change, right? Moxley, we got his comments here from the New York Post. He's all talking about change, constant change, and how we kind of make the ladder so people that can raise upwards and can move upwards. And then what do you think? Well, yeah, I'd lose it to Darby, and then he drops it straight to Christian, and we're back to a WWE, ex-WWE mid-carder holding the belt. That doesn't say change to me.
Nope.
And God help it, if this match, right, and this is being pre-mad, but if this match is just a setup to get Adam Copeland the big pop, you can fuck off.
Yeah, that's another one that I'm just Jesus Christ.
You've got to figure this stuff out. I understand business-wise putting Paige in there at the moment because it's his time of year in terms of, female 35-49, we know the lead-in's bigger. His quarter-hour hit rate's very good. You can understand it. And then you can throw a bone so people can't say, they'll say, look, he's being booked, great. And
right.
It'll cover it up for another few months, Jay makes sense. They obviously don't want him to take a pin by himself, so, okay. Christian, I have no time for it whatsoever, to be honest. It's just not the place for it.
I don't understand how anyone could seriously consider, with the roster that they have, with the talent they have under 40, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to go to Christian Cage as a goddamn fucking, considering him for a title in 2025. It's the kind of thing that is why am I watching this show at all? It's embarrassing. It's shitty. It says, what does it say about how you view the rest of your fucking roster? It's awful. It's an awful idea. It should be immediately discounted. And I'm sorry, just don't fucking do it. I don't care that you like Christian. I don't care that he's one of your favorite wrestlers. Look at you want to look at the championship reign. We're going to keep going to these old guys. And I'm sorry, I'm lumping Danielson in that category too, which is kind of unfair of me. Danielson, Samoa Joe, fucking Punk. These are the worst title reigns that AEW has had, right? Mm-hmm. And in each case, now, not necessarily with Samoa Joe, obviously you had MJF had been fucking champion for a year, but in the other two cases, you cut short your young guys' title reigns to give these fucking retirement title reigns, well, not retirement for Punk, although it ended up being that way.
Make-A-Wish title reigns.
Make-A-Wish title reigns to these fucking old guys. And in each case, it got you nothing except less people watching your show. None of these guys got you anything. So why are we doing it? You have how many fucking incredible wrestlers bumping up against this ceiling that they can't ever seem to break through, right? And yet we're going to go back to fucking Christian Cage? Come on. And I get I'm getting pre-mad. I'm hoping that saner heads prevail and that this doesn't happen. But it's one of those things that is just, Christian Cage should not be beating fucking anybody for a title. She shouldn't be beating people younger than him, period, let alone anybody for a title. And that's where I'm going to put it up for this. But it's just dumb, 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 dumb.
And we're saying it not because, like, oh, we're getting pre-mad. No, we're saying it because we want people to listen. And
Yes,
we hope people
please.
do listen. So if we make the point...
Stop watching the fucking show if you do this!
Yeah, because what happened? You came out of Forbidden Door. You came out of the Swerve Ospreay match. You want to include Ospreay as well, fine. You know, you had the Hangman character come back. You peaked in 18 to 34 for the year after March in that period. And then you chucked it all away very, very quickly.
Yep.
And now we are where we are. And it's like, so when Moxie does like the interview with like the Post and he's talking about like the ladder, right? So he's like, everyone that was on top was at one time at the bottom. That's how it works. You climb the ladder. You see a lot of frustration and confusion with some of these talents because there is no fucking ladder. They don't know what to do. They're kind of just wandering in the desert. We're going to grab them by the shoulder and we're going to walk them. And he's kind of using the kayfabe and his real life thoughts. But how is this going to elevate and change AEW is a real big thing. So you are telling everybody this is going to change. This is going to turn around the company. You're using the words turn around, which should be a message to a lot of people that think everything's fine or everything's awesome. It's like the Lego song, isn't it? You know, Lego movie.
Yeah,
like,
everything is awesome.
Yeah, it's like there's loads of people sat in a box going, everything is awesome. No, I'm not singing. But there is an absolute thing of that. And it's like, well, no, the company are telling you they're trying to turn it around because they've spent the whole year looking for this flash in the pan story that's going to like make things hot. Yep. You know, we're going to do these power struggle stories. We're going to do all this. And so Moxie's talking about like people are able to elevate and raise up. And you should always point out the hypocritical part of this that,
Sure.
You know, he cut off the younger guy. You know, Swerve and Hangman got cut off by this Danielson Moxie stuff. Fine.
Yes.
Whatever. You know, you can't look at any other way. That is what happened. But it's like, how do you think this is going to change it? So you think you're just going to wrestle these guys and it's going to elevate them? We're beyond that now. We're beyond that. That's gone. That doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Or are we going to do? Are we going to make some of these younger guys champions, but they're not going to be positioned or given the opportunity to lead programs in the way that older guys are? So they're still in the same spot, but we're giving them a belt. And then we did this in 2022. Yep. Oh, let's give Sammy Guevara a belt, or let's give, I don't know, Jurassic Express a belt, or the Lucha Brothers a belt, or Hangman a belt, or Thunder Rosa a belt. Hey, look at our homemade champions. We're getting that now. We've got Garcia, right? Wearing that Restore the Feeling shirt, which I'm sorry, it needs to go. Get rid of it. It's just, no, stop it. Okay, he's got TNT belt. He's going to go into the C2. So the champion's going to get beat multiple times, and that belt's worth what? Why is a champ? I just, no, don't like that. Sorry. And then you've got Private Party, so they win the belts. Private Party for me last night. This is the exact perfect example of what you were talking about. Okay, yep. Private Party had that, like, the Bucks did everything they could in ring and out of ring, and Private Party stepped up. They did a good job. They did a good job with promos. They did a good job with everything. They have had nothing since then. Right? They won the titles 4 weeks ago, however long it was. They won the titles. Nothing has happened with them. They have not. They had a couple of backstage stuff, whatever. Nothing has happened. Okay. Nope. Last night we have their first defense. What is it? It's 3 other face teams. Okay. 3 face teams, all of whom got to do their meme gimmicks, and then we had an acclaimed breakup angle. Was that match about Private Party in any way? Did Private Party get over in any way through that match? Why are you not having Private Party defending against a heel monster team so that they can overcome and come back? Nothing says Tony Khan doesn't give a flying fuck about Private Party like last night's match of the positioning. Like, it just screams 2022 all over again, and to me it's a perfect example of what you're talking about here. We're going to put a belt on somebody, and then we're not going to give them any room for a follow-up. We're not going to give them any teams to make them look better. We're just going to slot them in a spot, and then this is what frustrates me so much sometimes about fans, where they're like, oh, Private Party sucks. Like, can you not see how much the booking has screwed them over here? Like, it's nothing to do with them. They what are they supposed to do here? Yeah, and it's the same with Takeshita. So we give him a belt. Yep. Because we want to shut everybody up that's moaning about it. But actually, we brought him back from the G1. We stuck him in a match on Rampage. He gets the belt without actually beating anyone of substance in the weeks before. He gets it because Carl Fletcher turns on Will Ospreay. They get the lead feud then in that program, or in the Don Callis family, with all the, all the promo time, everything like that. His match gets announced 2 days before on Twitter. That doesn't happen to Will Ospreay.
No.
It doesn't happen to Will Ospreay. So what we've done is we've give these people belts to shut people up and say, hey, look, he beat Ricochet, yay. It's like, it doesn't change anything.
Nope.
He's not getting anything out of it. So we've got nothing out of Ricochet's first loss. Nothing. because we didn't make it mean anything, because we're doing this to keep other people happy. We're saying, hey, yeah, these got belts. Look over here. Here are my stars. They're still the same fucking people as they've always were. You watch Dynamite on Wednesday, right? You've got the same segments. We've got Adam Cole with 3 segments and Chris Jericho with a segment who aren't even on the fucking pay-per-view.
Right.
Max has to get his segments. Mox gets his segments. When Copeland comes back, he'll get his segments. Christian gets his segments. The order's not changing. So if you're going to talk about change, well, when Orange Cassidy comes back or when he's like that, is he going to be elevated up or is he going to be back in the same spot?
Right.
Because this is fucking pointless to talk about change if you don't deliver it. And change does not mean sticking a fucking belt on somebody that no one cares about anymore because you've got too many and you've made it very clear that they're meaningless in the most part. Doesn't mean anything. Right. If you give Darby Allin that main belt and then 5 weeks later you give it to Christian Cage, it doesn't mean anything. If you don't put people on top slots, you don't give them promo time, you don't let them lead feuds and then give that the focus, and it's still the same guys on top. And I think that's my biggest issue. I've got one other as well because you've seen what I wrote underneath. But my biggest issue with this Moxley thing is I don't feel anything's changing because it's not. I watch a TV and I've got to sit through 45 minutes of Adam Cole and MJF's kind of do of this awful fucking program, which all he's doing is making Cole probably the least over he's ever been in his career. It's fucking boring. I'm not interested because we've seen it all before, and that's why you don't have your 18 to 34. Seen it. Right. Seen Moxley on top. It's nothing special. It's nothing different. No, he's just a cowardly heel now. We lost anything special about it. And we cut off an interesting heel to do it. So we've had to call other people down to do this, but it's the same guy on top. I've seen it, and he's wrestling the same guys. Yep. There's no interest for it, and there's nothing that's kind of catching your imagination or your emotion. And while I'm on it, fuck it. This power struggle stuff, this restore the feeling, this Team AEW fighting for the soul AEW, what planet are you on? All right? People don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck about AEW in that way. You will have people that do, okay, yeah. But in the majority now, you destroyed that. The honeymoon's over. It's been over since 2021. You did this. People don't see your brand like that. And that comes, I think, from the echo chamber of social media where everyone's like, oh, Tony. No. They don't give a fuck who's the face of AEW, who's doing media, who's fighting for the soul. We've had 2.5 years of this, and every fucking person that's fought for AEW, whether it was Britt Baker, whether it was Adam Page, whoever said them words of like, I'm an original, has then got fucking beat. You've told them they're not worth anything. So now I'm going to believe they're worth something? Fuck off. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And all it does is make people even care even less, because they're like, this is so convoluted now, it doesn't mean anything. If you take that out of this stuff, and it's about like Utah, and it's about challenging Cassidy to step up, even though everyone knows that this complacency might as well just be a word for we booked them like shit because other people have come in that we liked more, even though they're actually worse. It's like, it doesn't mean anything. So all we're doing is just putting this in our heads and everyone's heads that actually the company's not the good guy.
Yeah.
Why should they fight for the company? This company may have given them that, but it's also taken away in a much larger degree. So you can watch your NXT Undisputed Era reunion. Like, that's what it's done.
That nobody watched in 2020 on a different channel, so...
Yeah, they beat this, and now we have it as a fucking replay.
Every goddamn week.
Yeah, and I have to watch Roderick Strong trying to cut promos, and then you can't get 2 minutes out of Adam Page. It's just fucking ridiculous. Like, it doesn't mean anything. You know what? How loyal are your fans to you now? NXT's on. They'd rather watch NXT with its stupid promos and its ridiculous fucking skits. They'd rather watch that. They have no loyalty to you anymore because you destroyed it. They have no trust. They have no loyalty. They don't care about who's the face of AEW anymore. They just watch the wrestlers they like and see how they go. That's where we're at now. So you want personal feuds. You don't want to hear about that because all it reminds you is the company's not as good as it once was.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
So drop the fucking thing. And, you know, we do drop the thing because none of these guys are really interested in being like, you know, saving AEW. And God, if you try and do that with a Hangman face turn and you involve Kenny Omega, I'm just going to, that's it. What did I say last year? Like JD for New York? I said I say that for the Kenny Hangman tag run, which I'm sure we'll get next year when they're trying to isolate both of them. But it's like, nobody cares. Nobody cares. So all you're left with is a heat-heavy pay-per-view, right?
Yep.
Where... and Connor said this in our group chat earlier, one of our two Connors, they're like thing one and thing two, aren't they? You know, the danger with this is that you beat way too many potential stars in the name of heat, and then you need to pay them off with big babyface victories, or fans get tired from it. And that was exactly what happened in WWE in the 2010s. And then they didn't pay it off. So we got heat. The baby faces look like idiots. They're the only ones losing. They're not the stars. And then we go nowhere. Because people they lose trust. And they just go, I'm fucking done with this. In fact, the only heel that gets beat all the time that's no threat is Hangman. So the only original one is the one that gets beat. And all the ex-WWE guys are wandering around only losing to each other or only losing, via kind of cheap means. So it's just, it does not work. Do you think there's too much of the heel stuff at the moment, bearing in mind like the atmosphere around Night at the Company?
It's funny to me because I feel like there was a point last year where there were no heels. Like you and I talked about this, I feel like at the end of Full Gear last year, like there were no heels. It was just faces. And then it seems like, and that was where, I remember we talked about how great it was that Hangman was turning heel because he was one of the only few guys doing it. And now we've gone to the complete opposite direction where there's all of these fantastic, heels, but like the baby faces are either doing something completely separate, isolated on an island, like Osprey and Swerve, or they're looking like idiots, like Darby and OC. They don't look like smart characters, at least not this past week. And that was one of the things that frustrated me about this week with the OC storyline is I was like, there's tons of ways that you could set this up that doesn't make this guy look like a moron. And yet instead you went up with the one that makes him look like a moron, right? Like, and that's where, again, I was like, okay, well, maybe something will happen with this that he will look good. Like there's a reason why he's doing it like this and that something will look, no, nothing. So it was just like, oh, he looked dumb, self-sacrificing dumb. And I think that's the problem right now is you have so many heels, and I get that they're trying to build a bunch of them up, but like there's nobody chasing, and everybody loves Darby, but Darby also looks weird as hell. Like, why is he running cars into cars? Why didn't he come out in the match? Like, why is he waiting until the absolute last possible minute and then running a car into another car and giving himself a concussion? Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah, why is he not the guy going and trying to help?
Right.
When Yuta and Moxley are attacking. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why is it Adam Page? That makes... Right. Oh, I'm just going to wait, so I go in the car and I'm going to ram the car.
It seemed...
Like,
again, it was sort of ridiculous. So, like, that's the part for me where I'm just like, there's just... You have MVP's group, you have Shelton and Bobby Lashley, and, like, that's fine. Like, that's one of those ones where I'm like, it's not necessarily something that I'm like, wow, this is for me, but I don't hate it. In a vacuum, it's great. And, but I'm also like, we have yet another, Swerve is there to put over Bobby Lashley. Like, is that what we want Swerve to be doing? Like,
it's the same group though, isn't it? It's the same group of guys that put over everybody. So you've got these group of guys at the top that only lose really to each other or cheap. So you've got Moxley's part of that group now this year. He's not lost this year, so I can't call him anything else. And he's beating the people that he did put over. So I can't exactly feel like, oh, he's putting people over. And then you've got, Christian, Copeland, MJF only loses with kind of cheap finishes anyway. Has lost, Cole will go in that group. And then you've got these guys underneath. The Ospreys, the Swerves, the Hangmans that will put people over. And you are making a definition between them. Yeah. So these are the stars and these are the guys that put people over. And they're putting people over that are coming in from outside, from WWE, that were mid-carders. So you lessen them. And I know that, with the Swerve thing, the idea is that, oh, he comes back and he's like that. And I thought, the pass-out finish was pretty much predictable. But are these your guys or not? You need to have a nucleus of guys which are your guys. They're AEW guys. Especially if you're going to do all this pandering to Team AEW and all that bollocks. Like, then push those guys. Make them centerpiece stars. And make these guys the people that that are kind of alongside. Whereas what you're doing is you're using your own guys at this level to put these guys over when they come in, which is exactly what we did. We're just repeating 2022. We are literally just repeating the same thing because they obviously thought it worked then, but it didn't. It didn't. Because we don't acknowledge what went wrong there. We still don't acknowledge it.
Is Adam Cole over? Like, he's less over than he was? Is Roderick Strong over? Like, no one cares. Well, this is my question for you, right? So we had a show last night that in some spots there was a lot of heat for different matches. Yep. And in other spots there was no heat for matches. Okay. Do you think this is in any way based off of is that an indictment of the television and the builds leading up to this match? Right. Like, I think, the fact that freaking MJF had to get a microphone to insult New Jersey before people gave a fuck is like, are you kidding me? Right? Like, no one cares about that. And, Hangman and Jay White, I thought their match was good. I thought it was different than other matches on the card and around them, which I appreciated. But it had no heat. Nobody cared.
But we knew that was coming.
Not a surprise.
Knew that was coming.
Nobody fucking had TV time, right?
Nope.
The same was true for Ricochet and Takeshita. I didn't think that match was particularly good, and the audience didn't either, because that thing had absolutely no heat. So
here's the thing about that one. So Jay and Hangman, we've talked about, they've had a pretty poor build. They've not had any time. They've not even had one kind of live interaction between each other.
Yep.
With both having mics. The alignment's wrong. He's got an unearned heel turn. Hangman's just rudderless completely. You've called him off massively in the same way you always do after he got hot again. And it's like, we could see that coming. And if the reaction was going to be, we knew Paige was going to end up with more of the reaction than Jay, which is what happened. Which he did. With Ricochet and Takeshita. So this is an interesting point. So a couple of weeks ago, I'm going to use a Lance Storm quote. Everyone's going to be like, what? Lance Storm? But he was talking about being a heel in 2024 and how it's different. And it did make me think, because I think there was 3 or 4 examples on that card last night that kind of exemplified where people were trying to work in a more traditional heel way, where you get heat and by being kind of unflashy or not stealing kind of the limelight from the baby face. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So he said, as an example, when there's a striking exchange late on in a match, both wrestlers tend to fall to the mat. When that happens, there is no one to visibly cheer for, so they cheer for the match. They do "This is awesome" chants. Traditionally, the babyface would win this exchange, fire themselves up, and then get the pop for the "oh my god" moment at the end of the sequence themselves. The match structures now are often not designed to get cheers just for the protagonist, like they're based to get cheers for both people. And he said, that probably comes from indie wrestling, where the idea was that you want to convince a promoter to bring both talent back rather than just the one.
Right.
And also, that's meant that we've seen people, who would in the past eliminate the kind of flashy offense in order to stop them from getting cheered and to get the babyface over with the stronger offense. And I think there was different examples of that last night. You can kind of look at why it did and didn't work. So Hangman very much does that. He's eliminated all his dives, his flips, a lot of his kind of flashier offense, his speed offense, and he can adapt. The reason why Jay White works so well with Hangman is that Hangman works to Jay White. He's in that Shingo, Kenny Omega category of he can work to people, but within the means of his character. So when he was getting cheered, the first thing he did was try and turn that heat around. And that actually got the Jay the best reactions he had in the match by the end of it when they went into the kind of the closing sequence. So for him, I think it works. But I think that's because his character's strong enough and his reactions to the crowd are strong enough that he can read the crowd and go, okay, this is what I need to do. Whereas I thought we saw other varying things. So Takeshita is miscast.
Yes. Horribly.
Yeah.
Horribly.
And Ricochet. So if you are going to do that with Takeshita and you're going to slow him down, and you're going to have these control buttons, then Ricochet needs to be doing all the big flips. He needs to be doing all those things that are exciting and the things that are reminiscent of Ricochet in the past, so that you have that babyface thing. And instead, we just had this slow, lumbering match that just never got out of first gear and was probably the biggest disappointment on the show from expectations. Yeah, we didn't expect anything out of Strong and MJF. So
and we didn't get it either.
We didn't get, no, but we didn't expect it. But we did expect something out of this one when it appeared 2 days before. But we didn't get it. And I thought, is that because they are structuring in that way to try and get more baby faces over in a company that now has no practically, doesn't feel like it has a babyface hero at all?
No.
Or is it something else? But I don't think it works for him because the way his offense is, it's high impact, fast. You need the kind of shot strikes. And I thought the worst example was Jack Perry. So we had Jack Perry doing control sequences when he's, normally he's the little guy that gets away with stuff and that. He shouldn't be doing control sequences. He's not that big guy. He's not tough. He's not a massive guy. It's just not for him. And it was like an example of, and we saw it with the Bucks early in the year, when they slowed down their offense.
Yeah.
And people didn't like that, the slower matches. But the whole idea is that you try to give the baby faces more because you want to get the baby faces over. So I guess my question is, where do you think the line is in this? Do you just get yourself over as a heel and just do all these things to make the matches better so you get your 5-star, like your Fletcher Ospreay stuff? Or do you slow it down like that to try and focus on the baby faces when you've got baby faces that maybe aren't so natural in terms of getting a crowd response?
I don't know. I'm not opposed to a flashy baby face in some circumstances. Like, I think it can help sometimes to elevate the heel, depending on how they're flip side of that, I'm saying that incorrectly. I'm not opposed to flashy heels because I think they can elevate the baby face in certain circumstances, right? But at the same time, like, it's almost as though the people agenting the matches had no idea what the strengths and weaknesses of each wrestler were. And that was the part that I found kind of fascinating. Like, I don't know why we were doing this incredibly slow pace Takeshita and Ricochet match.
Yep.
Like, it just made no sense to me. And it was, in some ways, it reminded me of like a WWE match where it was like spot, pause, spot, pause. And I was like, what's happening here? Like, this should be like, if your goal is to get Ricochet over, this should be a fast-paced match where he's doing like crazy moves and Takeshita's trying to overpower him, right? If your goal is to get Takeshita over, then he should be overpowering almost the way Lashley did with Swerve, right? Like, I thought that match worked better in terms of just being like a power match
and that's a WWE style sprint. I know I say it, but that is the same match that he would have in WWE with just maybe a little bit of more exuberance from Swerve because he's just a more dynamic performer than a lot of guys.
Right.
But
it's the same match. Maybe a little better at selling. I don't know.
Yeah,
like, it just,
it's the same match.
That's the part where I'm just kind of like, why? I don't know. Like,
yeah.
I'm not opposed to any of these guys in a vacuum. And I definitely don't want to be disrespectful of saying, like, it's meaningful to people that you have the Hurt Syndicate in AEW, that you have this number of black wrestlers and managers in a ring at the same time. Like, I'm not trying to downplay that at all. But it's just like, MJF's not giving up his time to Orange Cassidy. Like, now that Orange Cassidy lost that match and, supposedly going to be elevated, MJF's not giving up his time. Roger Cole, but Adam Cole's not giving up his time.
Roger Cole.
Christian, they got married. Christian Cage isn't giving up his time. Like, none of those guys they're all going to be like, oh no, great. And like, they won't give up their time. And Orange, because of who he is, will end up doing Collision or Rampage or whatever Tony wants him to do because he's a good soldier and he's grateful to have a job in AEW and he won't, he's not the squeaky wheel. And so as a result, it's like, we're going to elevate these guys, but we're not because, we'd rather have Bobby Lashley beat Swerve, which, I don't have a problem with anybody losing. I want to make it clear. I'm not somebody who's like, oh my God, they lost once they're buried. I don't believe in that shit. I don't think it's true. I think you can look back to 2023 and see the value that Swerve proved in losing and being willing to lose and do a job. Like, it's part of the reason why he got elevated to where he is. But I also think you'd like to see Swerve lose to somebody like younger, right? And more exciting.
Yeah, well, the problem is there's just a difference. So you've got the guys that don't lose or lose cheaply, and the guys that lose. And while there's that definition and that change, and then you bring in more guys to go in that top column, like when Copeland come in, he's still not lost a match to outside of Christian. Like, these guys, there's no point to that. And if you then feed him to like Moxley, like, that would just be a disaster because it's like, who does that get over? It just doesn't. And, I think you're getting a lack of heat from that, and you've got a little bit of what we felt in TNA when somebody comes in from WWE and we treat them like the big stars. We've seen that a little bit with the Hurt Syndicate. Who's that in the Impact Zone? That kind of goes through my head every time I see them, unfortunately. But I do think, there's repeat stories, repeat characters. There's a real lack of new and youth in terms of what's coming in, and I think you can feel that. And I do think that's responsible for part of the lack of heat, the issues with the alignment. There's too many similar heel characters. You had Max talking about he's dangerous now, like he's John Moxley. It's like, no, don't do that. Like, there's no need. You need to separate these things. These need to be different stories. We had a lot of limb work last night when actually the only limb work match really should have been, Hangman and Jay White, because that had been their story since WrestleDream.
How many people went through the fucking announce table? Like, that happened over and over and over and over again, right?
So you got to think about this stuff.
Like,
you got to think about this stuff. So that's where it's like, you're going to get a lack of heat because it's predictable and it's boring in a lot of ways at the moment, and it's emotionless. That is the key thing. There is nothing grabbing at people's heartstrings at the moment. There's nothing for them to really will and invest in. I don't think they feel about this around this Mox angle. You know, people that like it, I don't know if do they feel emotionally attached to it, or just do they think, oh, that's cool, well, I like that heel. I don't know. And that's the difference. That's when you're going to feel that difference, is when people are really emotionally invested in something. So even like the Danielson stuff in the summer, like we got nothing out of that on the other thing. But if you've seen his career, you were emotionally invested.
Yes.
But there's none of that right now. Not for anybody. Not for us, not for them, not for anybody.
I think for me, as somebody who was like, hey, this is one of my favorite wrestlers. I fucking love Jon Moxley. Like, this is like, let's watch this. But the disappointment at the end was, okay, like, this is great. We put Orange Cassidy in a main event. I'm really excited to see him go for the title. I don't mind that he loses the title. It's fine if they're not going to do this to him right now, but I'd like to see something come out of it that's like emotionally rewarding to me as a fan. And it wasn't there. Like, no, he just got beat up. He just lost in horrible, depressing fashion. Like,
and then was a second fault as they went on to their next angle for the next pay-per-view. Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like, oh, okay. I guess, you know, you knew going in he wasn't winning, right?
Sure.
But you'd at least like to think, hey, there's something here. And there wasn't.
Yeah, look, there was lots of really good wrestling on this show.
Yes.
But everything just feels so disconnected.
There's always really good wrestling.
Yeah, and we give him a hard time for that because, you know, when someone asked me last night, I think Seth on our Discord asked me what I thought of the show, and I thought it was like competent, it was good, not great sort of thing, but it's on their kind of scorecard. It's unfair. Like if I was to watch a WWE show, you grade it differently because it's like the quality's different of what you're used to.
How do you think this matched up to Full Gear last year? Because I ended up randomly recently re-listening to our Full Gear show from last year and thinking about the main event with Jay White and the main event angle and how
angry.
We were so mad. We were so mad. And I was like, you know, they had a main event angle this year. It was different because it was kind of after the main event as opposed to before. But
it was just stupid in ways. Do you know what I would say about that? I'm just recalling that day, actually, because I was so mad watching that show, and I went to football mad, and then we were awful, and I got rained on, and I was just not happy. But do you know what this feels like? And when we say it doesn't feel like change, this is just a different guy at the top telling a convoluted story in a different way. I don't feel... It doesn't feel that much different to last year. When you look at the TV, you talk about change, and it's going to be a more serious product. And, you know, we got the C2 coming up. Which is helpful for me, especially, who's not been invested in practically anything in this cycle. I've been honest about it. I'm not going to whine about it too much. We're going to talk. We talk through why some of these things are happening, and that's the kind of the important bit. But it's like, yeah, great. The C2 is good. Good, right? Okay, I know what I'm getting. You know, we don't know who we're getting completely yet. We know some of the names.
Selection Sunday.
Well, wherever that may be.
It's 3:15 p.m. in Eastern time in the United States, and
so it's like now.
They haven't announced when it's going to be. We don't know when they're doing the announcement. Unless
I thought you meant it was like coming now.
No, I don't know.
I don't know. But yeah, we've seen a selection of the names and stuff like everybody else, and it's like, they're fine. But it's like it's a tournament. I always enjoy the kind of tournament dynamics, and you can plan that out from A to B sort of thing. And I think they really need that because what you're seeing here is a lot. If we start with this great idea, and we've seen this so many times this year, and then it just gets completely off the rails. Because there is no follow-up, there is no plan, or it changes 5 times. So that's where the tournament's kind of, for someone like me, it's like, great, yeah, give me this tournament. Will I feel better when we see, we'll see this cycle when, like, Paige is involved in the main event? Yeah, no, I don't think so, because we know it's not going.
Well, Fletcher is a perfect example of this for me, right?
Yeah.
The match last night was great. I thought it was awesome. Like I said, I was emotionally invested. But at the same time, like, I'm ready for a Tony Khan special where Ospreay did a big win for a guy he likes and cares about, and Tony has no plans to follow up for him because
if we're going to put him in, we're going to put him in the C2, right? So it's not really going to be a spoiler by the time this comes out. So we're going to put him in the C2, and then what? Is he going to win the C2?
Right.
Is he going to lose? Like, what are you doing with him? Are you going to have a rematch with him and Ospreay and he's going to go back or what? So you have to think that through. And you can say, oh, well, we put Swerve in the C2 after he beat Hangman last year. And we shouldn't have done, quite frankly. No. As much as it gave him the time, there's a benefit to it because at least he's going to be on TV every week. He can cut the backstage promos every week.
Yes.
And we don't see this unless you're in with a top guy. in general anyway. You know, we always say that was a benefit of the Chris Jericho feuds, is that you'd be on TV every week cutting promos, and it's the same with John Moxley now and a number of others. So there is a benefit of being in the C2, but then what's his movement up? Garcia's gone into there. He's just won a belt. What's his now movement up?
Right.
Or is he just a guy with a belt, like Takeshita, like Private Party?
Right.
You know, this is the thing. You're either going to change it and you're going to move it to another kind of era. And this is where, you know, the potential of having a potential shockwave may open that up. Because if you've got two shows with, you know, proper kind of TV, not Saturday night, 8 o'clock, then you need to, and they've talked about a soft split of the roster. You know, Collision will be the crossover of a few acts, and pretty much the roster that you see now, the idea would be to split the top for Shockwave and for Dynamite if that was to happen. That may help because you need somewhere for these people to go.
Yeah.
There's no ladder because there's nowhere to go. It's like they've cut the ladder from the top. It's not that there isn't a ladder, we've just cut it because we don't want anyone else up there. It's like the opposite of the mentality they had at the start where they had to make stars.
Right.
And that's where, you know, that ladder's cut because that top bit's got crowded now. So they've got to think about how that would work. And Shockwave may alleviate that. But if not, and if that doesn't happen and you can't guarantee anything, you know, there's talks, but that doesn't mean anything until it's done, then you've got to figure out a way. Because otherwise it's just going to just continue the kind of popularity feeling. So yes, they are safe. They are, you know, they have a TV contract that's going to go for years. They're financially going to be solid. Fine. But for us, it's about wanting to enjoy this product.
Yeah.
And I can't say, I find I'm struggling to enjoy this product as of late. Because it's so frustrating. And we're so used to the pattern now. There's still people that aren't. There's still people that go, it's fine, they'll win the world title next year and stuff like that. And you just want to go, oh, for God's sake. It doesn't matter. But it's like...
It's almost depressing when people are like, oh, Hangman's going to beat Darby. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, no, that's nice. When's my next bedtime story?
You still believe?
Yeah, that's depressing in itself. I've done that many a time. I just like, that's where it is. He's Dean Ambrose. We've told you that. It's such a perfect analogy. It's so funny. But it's like, yeah, but then people will lose their trust too. If you keep doing this and you keep doing this, they'll lose their trust. And you've got these big events coming up, you know, Grand Slam is on sale now. You know, he said he sold thousands of tickets. They were actually off sale for a large part of last week after a system outage, and they stayed off sale and everything else went back on. And he said we sold thousands, so not tens of thousands, which tells you what they've sold because Tony's quite particular. And when you go back on their inventory now, you know, there's less than 700 tickets on there. So possibility of moving that show probably quite high. But you've got that event coming up. You've got All In going on sale in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
You know, in Texas. So you've got these big events to build around to make destinations, but you've got to get people that will and that anticipation that we're not just going to a big show, that we want to see this baby face overcome something there. What happens if we see this match there? What happens if we see that match there? There is none of that right now. No. There is none of that feeling right now of anticipation. I'm not anticipating Darby even beating Moxley. It just feels like it's kind of done, and the way that they're treating Darby doesn't make me want to believe in it. You know, we beat him a Grand Slam. We made him look an idiot with the contract thing from the Battle Royal, and then we had Claudio destroy him. Okay, and now it's okay because he hit someone with a car. Like, that's not making me think like I want this guy to really beat this guy. It's making me think, why do I bother? And that's not the emotion. Like, you don't want to be a thing of like, do I feel like I really want to watch this? No, the idea is to get that anticipation and not just like what's going to happen next, but to be excited and invested in it. Right. And I think that investment is the feeling that's really been missing. But, you know, and to be fair, I mean, the show, it did, I think he said over 10,000 on the press scrum, which would be slightly down from the last Full Gear in the same venue. Which WrestleTix had at 12,106. The AEW number they gave to Dave was 11,800, and then the number that went through from the venue was 10,850 with a gate of 1,199,486 annual average ticket price of 110.55. So it's by current AEW standards, it's a really good gate. It'll be a really good gate in terms of it won't be anywhere close to that because the prices were a lot lower. But we've got into a decent trend since kind of Full Gear last year.
Yes.
Around
Yes.
pay-per-view pricing. That was where they really figured it out after the mess of WrestleDream last year.
Oh God, yes.
That's a disaster. But yeah, so they figured that out. So you're getting good pay-per-view crowds, and I think the huge part of that is that you know what the product is on pay-per-view. You're going to see where the best wrestle. You're going to see these wrestlers wrestle that we don't see wrestle every week anymore. It's not like it's a huge difference from the start of AEW. You know, you want to talk about differences and like be nostalgic about it. You can go and watch every week. You could go watch Kenny Omega wrestle. You could watch the Bucks wrestle. You could watch Jericho wrestle. You could watch Moxley wrestle. You could watch Hangman wrestle. That doesn't happen now. But the pay-per-views, you know what you're going to get.
Yes.
So you don't have to worry about not seeing these people or not seeing them wrestle. And you know the quality is going to be better. And that is why these shows are still holding up in a way that TV isn't for me. And then buy rate, Tony said it should beat WrestleDream. WrestleDream said to do the same around All Out. We'll wait and see what the numbers are with that. If it just about beats WrestleDream, it's slightly disappointing because last year was like 135,000, 131,000, depending on whose figures. That would take it down to probably about 20% less, so kind of in line with Forbidden Door and All In. But I don't think that's... I think you can see that. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. We'll see what he does with late buys. So we'll come back to that, and I'm not sure how much information we're going to get on that. But yeah, it's it just feels static, I think, and you know, I can't pretend. I'm not going to sit here and rave about everything because I didn't think, you know, we have to reflect that. But I just wanted to talk through as many of the kind of feelings as we can. There is one other conversation that's been sparked in the last month that was sparked by young Mr. Adam Cole and his interesting tan.
Jaundiced appearance.
Bless him. Right, I am not the nicest person to Adam Cole. We have said it. I have taken many jokes at him. Not about his appearance, but just my frustration with Adam Cole, and this comes into this, is that in terms of his appearance, it's not that, it's that he doesn't wrestle to his body size.
Correct.
And this is driving me crazy. This is where the NXT Black and Gold thing kind of kicked in. So he does not use his body and his size to think. So I don't want to ever see him doing Panama Sunrises to Takeshita or to Adam Page or anyone else I've seen him do it to. Because it's like, you are wrestling, you're a strength wrestler, the same way Jack Perry was wrestling, and you are not that wrestler. And we've seen that most in this week, and it's kind of spiraled up around appearance and a kind of, you know, what kind of body shape do you need to have? And for me, I just think there's too much concentration on muscles or fat or even like, you know, his tan or whatever, when really the issues that you want to be looking at is, do you use your body that matches to match, you know, are you so wrestling's like expressing, you know, these stories with your body.
Yes.
So are you accurately telling stories that your body can tell? And that's what I feel like the issue is with Cole at the moment. And whereas I think a lot of the discourse went, especially around Cassidy, we've seen this loads with Cassidy in this program, is that they'll say, oh, he's too small, I don't believe in him. But actually, his offense matches his size.
Yes.
He uses his speed. He uses everything that he does.
Yes.
And I think that if he had been in WWE, we wouldn't be having these conversations. Because that's what you really want to say.
Right.
Bryan Danielson, not big guy. We don't say it about him. Why is that? Oh, he's successful in WWE. Okay, that's how it counts. So I think that's where this kind of description has kind of come from. But it is an interesting discussion as well, because someone like Cole doesn't use their size. Someone like Ishii, you know, does a spike bump on his no neck, looks incredible. So they know how to use their size. But it's also a case of, when it comes to appearance, you know, like, how important is it these days? How important is your actual appearance? Or is it more important to be kind of different, like your own brand, essentially, in your appearance?
I probably veer further away from this than like a lot of people. Like, I know there are guys who are like, you have to have muscles, a physical business. Cody fucking Rhodes, right?
Yeah.
Fuck that guy. Sorry, I just think that's, your father's fucking Dusty Rhodes. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Whatever. I think I am with you. I think that the size matters nothing to me. If you're telling me a story that makes sense with the way that you look and the way that your moves impact the other person, I'm completely fine with that. That's why I think Darby and OC are as successful as they are. And I do think one of the things that AEW does very well is David versus Goliath matches. They've always done very well at telling a story where a little guy beats a big guy. I don't know a promotion that does as well as they do on that. Like, it's just, they're great at it. And Darby and OC are the two guys that usually are in those spots. They're both incredible at selling. And for both of them, the stuff they do with their bodies matches both their size and their character work, right? Orange Cassidy usually plays possum, pretends to be dead, ragdolls himself, and then comes back at the last minute because he's been faking his opponent and us out, right? That works with the fire up moment. Darby is an absolute wild man and throws himself at everything and turns himself to a human cannonball, and you actually believe that he's causing damage to the other person, right? It works. Adam Cole is just spamming moves in a way that doesn't really make sense, and I think that's part of the disconnect is, the matches are boring. And I feel bad saying that. I feel bad every time that I have something negative to say about Adam Cole because he does seem like a genuinely nice person, And it sort of sucks to be like, I don't think you're very good. But the combination of it doesn't have anything to do with his body, and I feel like people who are weird about his body are just fucking weirdos. Stop being weird about other people's bodies. Like, don't be weird about it. Like, who cares what the guy looks like? The problem is that he's doing the same shit he's been doing for the last 10 years. His character hasn't changed. His friends haven't changed. He's the same person whether he's a face or a heel, and his moveset isn't interesting, and the match setups are not interesting. So, like, yes, that's the stuff that you should complain about. And sure, if you want to complain about his tan, complain about his tan. My thing with that kind of stuff is if you can fix it in 15 minutes, I can complain about it, okay? So he could fix his tan. You want to make a comment about the guy looking yellow, that's fine. Although I got to tell you, last night, a lot of guys looked yellow. I think there's something going on with the lighting. I'm not sure what the deal is, but there were a lot of weird fucking tans last night. Anyway, right? It's just one of those things for me where I'm like, I don't know. Like, don't be weird about people's bodies. Like, stop. Especially don't be, like, wrestling is one of the few places where the appearancesness for men is almost as bad as it is for women in just day-to-day life, right? Like, women take shit on their appearance constantly in any field, like, regardless of whether the field is relevant, like, their appearance is relevant to the field or not. And I think with wrestling, you get that closer to men, where men have to deal with that as well. But, like, I don't care. Like, this idea that, like you want to talk about weird Vince McMahon shit that we inherited from that weirdo. The idea that everybody has to be fucking bulky-ass, giant, like, bodybuilder dudes is weird Vince McMahon shit. Don't perpetuate it.
Takes a long time to get rid of kind of things that have been set as the standard, even though they don't really mean anything. Like, it doesn't matter if everyone looks the same, then no one gets over, right?
Right. Was Ric Flair like this big, bulky, muscular, giant dude? Fuck no. Like, what did Dusty Rhodes look like? Like, what are all these guys that we used to, like, they just look like normal guys.
Well, there you go.
Just be normal. Stop being weirdos about people's bodies, wrestling fans.
There's an important note as well, is that when it comes to your look, for TV, and especially if you want to be the world champion and you're not ex-WWE, there are expectations from the network. Because people that are weird about bodies are the network.
Oh, yeah, fucking TV executives.
Exactly. See, there is something to be said for that, and that's something that people should consider. I know it's not a nice thing to think about, but it is there. You'll see people's bodies change as they go towards the world title. We saw it with Swerve in terms of, losing that body fat. We saw it with Hangman. We saw it with MJF. Yep. It's a consistent thing, especially if you've not got that name recognition that you can shove in an executive's face. But in general, it's about how you market yourself, how you use yourself, and then, how you kind of change, how you just don't stand still or regress. You move forward constantly with that character or your look or things that are going to keep people invested in you, which is really, really hard these days with how quick people move on. So, there we go. Shall we talk about the date announcements for...
I thought this was very interesting, Trish.
Okay.
It was... I thought they were holding... So this is the date announcement that AEW just recently came out with this week for what they're going to be doing in the winter and spring. AEW had not made any announcements about upcoming shows after, I think it was like January 1st even. There were some dates in December they hadn't announced. And it was interesting, and I think there was I wondered if part of the reason why they weren't holding off was because of Shockwave, that they were trying to finalize that deal with Fox, and that's going to be if that deal does happen, that will be a major change in their touring schedule and other stuff. But they did make a bunch of announcements for this spring, and one of the things that is pretty interesting is that they have downsized for a lot of the venues that they're going to be using for television, which I think a lot of folks have been looking for them to do for a while. Dave had a note, Brian Alvarez had a note in the Figure 4 online that came out on Friday.
That was really good.
It was great. It was nice to read. I was like, Jesus, get stuck in a hotel room more often. This is fascinating.
There were some great snippets in that.
It was very
he
funny
hid
snippets.
loads of little things in that.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's so clever.
Very good Easter eggs. But one of the things that he mentioned was that AEW had a heavy lighting rig. That was not something that a bunch of different venues were going to be able to support. And so part of what they've been doing is downsizing their lighting rig so they could make use of these smaller venues, which makes a lot of sense. Anyway, so the big shows that came up is AEW is doing 3 shows in New York City at the Hammerstein Ballroom.
Sounded like me then.
Hammerstein, I'm turning into you. The 3 shows are Friday the 20th for Ring of Honor Final Battle, Saturday the 21st for Collision, and Sunday the 22nd is Dynamite, because Dynamite's going to be airing on Christmas night. So they're taping that show the Saturday before. I think each particular show's got about 2,200. It's 2,200, give or take, is going to be the amount they have to sell, and I think they've done a pretty decent job in the pre-sale so far. They've sold, I think, 1,500 tickets for Dynamite the last time I looked, and about 1,000 for Collision and Final Battle. So it'll be interesting to see how they do with those. They should really not have too much difficulty selling those out. We don't even have the general on sale yet. We'll have to see.
And they're on high price at the moment. So as they get nearer, it'll drop the price. It's like Cardiff, right? So that started out ridiculously high price, and it drops. And it's not great if you buy them first, in terms of thinking, if I waited, I got this. But it will ensure that they fill out venues on each night,
Yeah. And then the other one that's interesting is January 1st, Wednesday, Dynamite Fight for the Fallen, which is at the Cherokee Center in Asheville, North Carolina. That will be the first Dynamite that will be streamed on Max. Simulcast streaming, or whatever they were calling it last night. I can't keep
Simulcast.
That's such old technology. And then for the most part, there's nothing too crazy, but they are doing a couple of double tapings with Collision, mostly I think based around heading to Australia for Grand Slam. But yeah, it's good that they announced these, and I think this is they have to change tax when stuff's not working. If they're not filling bigger buildings and it looks like shit on TV and the noise is awful, then they have to go to smaller buildings. This makes more sense. I'm glad they're doing it. I'm glad there's a pivot.
Yeah, because a lot of these buildings are very similar to what they used when they first started. Mm-hmm. After the first couple of weeks, once you got out of the Philadelphia and Washington shows, the big shows, you had venues like this. And most of the time, there's only like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people in them. And yet the sound and the look was so completely different. Yep. And it made these people look like stars. Yep. Whereas you do have that issue now where, where they come out and it's silence. So the people that they may be recognisable from elsewhere, from like WWE, they still get some sort of reaction because they've seen them elsewhere. But then it's much, much harder for your kind of original talent or people that are making their name in AEW. And it does feel cold. You can't watch that TV on Wednesday and not feel cold, or the week before. Right. And that's never great. So if you run in a smaller building and you get people close together, you don't have that echo of the huge arena on having to close in on your camera shots. So you'll darken the crowd so you can only see 2 rows. Yeah. It's like, if you can get rid of all of that, then you make that product feel so much bigger. And that's the huge difference between the start and what they do now. So it makes sense. Go to these smaller buildings or go to these reasonable sized buildings, but in markets that maybe have been abandoned now that WWE are running much less house shows. Yep. Or you've not been into before, or college towns like Athens, Georgia, or places that you traditionally have done well, but the venue is only 3,500, like the HEB Center in Cedar Park, just outside of Austin in Texas. Yep. That one has had some of the best crowds they've ever had. I think Tony said that, including, I think, probably one of my favourite episodes of Dynamite back in July 2021. So it's only 3,500, but it always sounds like so much more. And they light it well, and the roof is great there. So use those type of venues. And then, book your crypto.com arenas for your pay-per-views. Make those pay-per-views destinations, because they're going to feel more like that now. They already are feeling more like that now. And that's why we're seeing this difference between TV and that. And you've got to be careful with that, because your TV product is what still, pays your bills effectively. You don't want to run into the kind of NXT 2017, 2019 thing of the pay-per-views being the only thing mattering. But from a live ticket perspective, it makes sense. And they've got the crypto.com arena because WWE have done a deal for the Intuit Dome, which they're going to show the first Netflix from, Raw from, in January. And that also, the company that runs that also runs the Forum. So they have flipped across from the Staples Center, now the crypto.com arena. Got used to saying that, crypto.com.
Crypto.com. Yeah, that's not easy.
That sounds like a yang. Crypto.com.
Crypto.com.
But they've moved across to that other company now, the other live events company in LA, to use their venues, and that's opened this up. So it just makes sense to do that, and it's what we've been asking for, Yeah. It's not been working. It's not, acknowledge it, fix it. Don't pretend it's not happening. Don't, and it'll get better performances out of the wrestlers. If you tell me that wrestlers can wrestle as well in a silent crowd with no response as much as they can a hot crowd, you're just lying.
No way.
Yeah,
no
it was like the pandemic. They realised how important it was to have those crowds. Yep. So you've got to do that. And if you're that determined on turning the company around and making it hot and all the other catchphrases they've been using lately, then this is a good step towards that. There are still quite a few live collisions. We know the previous deal had kind of 50% that you had to run live. Expect that to be kind of similar going forward. Collision will also still count a program. You see, Survivor Series is now 6 p.m. start this coming Saturday. I'm sure they'll have a pre-show to go against the 4 to 7 block of Collision and Rampage this week. And then I think there are gaps enough of it to have a potential shockwave, like a Tuesday night taping or something like that, or a Friday night, whatever it could be. So it does seem to work much better. And I think, doing something like Hammerstein or those sort of venues as one-offs, it's going to, them little bits of kind of, it's like when we got Grand Slam, when we got you got the Arthur Ashe Stadium, the tennis stadium, and that was so cool because it was so different.
Yes.
I mean, these are nostalgic venues, right? But it's like that sort of thing. People will just tune in for the venue. The same way they did for the ECW NXT thing the other week, So it doesn't hurt you to run these things. People aren't going to think lesser of your company. In fact, they'll probably think more of the atmosphere stronger than seeing a 20,000-seater arena in Lexington, Kentucky, empty. So it's the right move. It's something we've been talking about. Happy to see it. I think they made the right thing to leave it so late in some ways, to announce it late, because that way you don't get the kind of WWE jumping all over your thing like they did with World's End in Orlando. So that's important. That's something they've had to kind of fight against. And I think it was a nicely presented announcement, and they're advertising these things, so it's good.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge. From worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
There was somebody who really was unhappy about the Hammerstein shows. It was a good segue. That was a
very
good
good
segue.
Nice transition.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
Yeah. I wish my football team would be better on the transition, but there we are.
Yes, so AEW is running Hammerstein Ballroom for 3 shows in December. This was announced after GCW, which is running Hammerstein for a show in January. Hammerstein has not been selling for GCW. They went on sale. The tickets went on sale on October 23rd. Mm-hmm. I think the first count is like 549 tickets. The most recent count, I think. I'm reading it off. I know that I know that the first count is 549 tickets. The cheapest ticket for that show is $61, and the most recent count for that show is 631 tickets. That's out of 2,200 tickets they could potentially sell. Okay, so So the World on GCW in 2022 did 2,025 tickets. So no one is buying this show. I don't think anybody would disagree with me that GCW is a cold promotion right now, and that there's a lack of interest in this GCW show. The World on GCW was not received well. There were a lot of complaints from fans. It really sort of started a bad period for GCW, unfortunately. And now there seems to be a disagreement between Brett Lauderdale, the promoter for GCW, and Nick Gage. Nick Gage doesn't seem like he's going to be on this show, or if he is, it's a swerve that they're doing at the last minute or whatever. I don't think it's a swerve. I think he's genuinely not going to be on the show. So they're having a hard time selling the tickets. So Brett Lauderdale is very angry. Effie was very angry that this show got booked. They did not apparently have an exclusivity clause with Hammerstein that they couldn't book around that period. So Brett Lauderdale said the following: I don't know Tony Khan personally, and I don't know enough of their people well enough to know or to speculate whether they would do something like that just to hurt us. This quote's from Fightful. Without that being said, the traditional etiquette would be, there is a window where you don't go to the same buildings, should that window exist. You can call it an unwritten rule, or in many cases it's a written rule. I'm sure when AEW goes to venues, they probably have a rule written in that no other wrestling show can go there within 30 days or 60 days. It's a pretty standard practice in the wrestling business and a lot of entertainment industries, both written and unwritten. So they did not get an exclusivity. GCW did not get an exclusivity agreement, and Brett Lauderdale seems to be sort of suggesting that Tony Khan should be polite and not book the space. But I don't know. I don't think GCW and AEW's relationship is a positive one these days, so I'm not sure how much Tony Khan cares about.
Okay, so here's a few things about that. NXT were also looking to book the venue for the near future, but didn't because AEW are running it. They didn't care about GCW running it. They were going to book it. It's an observer. GCW piggyback off AEW weekends.
Yes.
The whole weekend in Jersey with Bloodsport today, and the show they ran yesterday in the mall with Ricky Starks on the escalator. It's a piggyback off Full Gear. So they make money off the back, and they've been doing this for years now, of AEW pay-per-views. They use AEW talent, including like Starks yesterday, Blake Christian, most importantly, they use Jon Moxley. Now, here's the thing. So they're doing this as like a sympathy thing, right? And I believe they were flyering after the show yesterday, which is the right thing to do.
Yes.
You know what? If you want to go and do something about this when them shows come up, go out. After the shows, sell some tickets. That's the normal thing to do. Use it as an opportunity rather than seeing as someone trying to hurt you when you're struggling with it anyway. And then, so the bit I loved the most, though, right, was about the written and unwritten, the written and unwritten rules and the pretty standard practice, right? So just as a reminder, at the start of 2022, Jon Moxley was out. He'd been to rehab. Yep. And he hadn't come back to AEW yet. In fact, he was due to come back a week before in, I think, Greensboro, North Carolina. I think it's Greensboro, yeah. And he couldn't because Danielson wasn't ready to fly yet after the match with Paige. So they postponed it a week, and he came back in Washington. They announced it, I think, on the Friday. Before they could announce it, GCW announced his return match at the World in GCW on Twitter. So you announced the return of one of AEW's biggest stars after a period in rehab, and rather than the company that he is signed with getting that benefit, you got it. Did you get permission for that? There's some things about that. These are written and unwritten rules. So you play the game, you know the game, you're going to play for sympathy, that's fine, but I don't have none because you make enough of this company. You do a lot of, you build your relationship with this company, you use their talent, and you are very much the same as any other promoter in this game. WWE have their 30, 60-day talent. They'll go in and, that's what we talked about earlier. They'll go in and they'll book venues that they know is in the same town and things and within 30 days. Do it all the time. It's competition. This is like a Cold War now. It's all spheres of influence, You pick your side, you think nothing. There is always going to be casualties in the middle. But you're a promoter. Like, stop whining. If you're supposed to be someone like, we're like the independent force and all this, and just stop whining. No one's cares. Again, it's that thing. Nobody cares.
No, nobody cares.
You might have your 40 people on Twitter that go, yay! But no one actually really cares. So all it just looks like is like kind of really pathetic, and they're trying to play off the whole kind of negativity towards AEW, and it's like, okay, whatever. But you are no better And in this relationship, I don't think you can say you've done much better. What you need to focus on, the fact is that last time you sold 2,000 tickets, currently you're at 600, and you've got potentially a Mance Warner. Who else is in that show? Mance Warner.
Effie.
Effie.
Mance, Effie, and Alley Catch.
Okay, main event.
Three-way for the title, yeah.
And maybe Kurt Angle. Okay. I would seriously consider looking at what my lineup is before I start moaning about anybody being in the same venue. We're also not moaning about MSG across the road from Hammerstein having a massive house show, which will take up, a lot of people's tickets monies. The week after, the week after AEW on the 26th. So you are going to have huge competition. You're going to have a competition for everything. There are lots of shows in New York. Just because it's in the same venue doesn't mean anything. That's something you live with when you're a promoter. So just shut up whining, please, because as funny as it is, I don't need to see Effie Tab videos and stuff. And, they're hurting us and he's a millionaire. And it's like, it was bad enough with your speeding ticket videos. I don't need this. So that's enough. Shut up. Go book that main event that looks thrilling. Anyway, right. WWE ticket update. Yeah.
Yes.
So, quick update on their live events as well. So, kind of big news that kind of happened during the period where we were away was that for the first time as long as I can remember, their build to WrestleMania, a lot of it's going to take place in Europe.
Yep.
So March 14th to March 31st, they are predominantly in Europe for that time with a number of house shows, and then TV in Belgium, Italy, Scotland, and England. Belgium, yeah, that's a first. I can remember they've done Italy before. I can think of France, Germany, and then lots in the UK. But I don't think I've ever seen a taping in Belgium, so that's pretty cool.
I have a question for you about this, but when you're done with it, I want to ask you.
Okay. I think it's important to have TV because they raised the prices on the recent house show tour. And we did see some down market to market. So in Manchester, where I am 15 minutes walk from said arena, they drew 7390 this time around, down 11%. And that's at the brand new 23,500 Co-op arena. Very nice arena. And then in Newcastle, they did 6753, down 15%. So I think this is where you have to do TV, then maybe as a recognition of. So you're doing more international shows, you're doing more house shows internationally and less domestically because you want to be able to charge more money for your product, and because it's rarer, you're thinking it's more destination. But the audience has to perceive that it's worth that value, and they evidently don't perceive house shows at that value. So now you're moving to TV. But there's huge benefits to doing that as well, because the atmosphere when you go abroad, especially in Europe, has always been better for WWE. And even though you normally run your traditionally hot cities, your Philadelphia, Boston's, etc., Brooklyn, New York, or whatever other venues are going to run in the run-up to WrestleMania, it just guarantees you like a different energy and a different crowd, and you can charge those prices. But it does seem to be a recognition that in terms of it has to be a worthwhile. It's not like UFC. They can't just kind of demand these prices on anything. Yeah. So you've got your destination shows. You've got your Rogers Centre going to be in Elimination Chamber in Canada. I'm sure that's going to do as well as Survivor Series is currently. But the ones underneath, it seems to be like this kind of two-tier system at the moment where they have to show the same value and the price rises aren't seen as worthwhile. So it's not kind of UFC style where it's kind of like you can get away with anything. And we're seeing that if you look at the average numbers. So people are talking about, but they're making more money. But it's like, the idea is not to just make more money. The idea is to still fill these buildings and you continue to rise the prices. And in some markets, it looks like they've already kind of hit that headwind.
Do you think that the move to go to Europe is also partially to avoid what will almost certainly be a year-over-year decline if they had stayed in the United States?
It's a difficult one because if it continued with where we are currently, then yes. I think the Cena retirement factor is the kind of the wild card, and I think they're banking on that to roll them through next year. Yeah. So if you had that, and especially if you had Cena going for the title, if you have him win the Rumble and you have him going for Gunther, and that 17th world title, that's not really a record, but they're going to pretend it is, and he's going to be the GOAT, then you can probably run away with that, and especially in the Northeast. He's a Boston guy, isn't he? So you're going to tell me off for that. Did he come from Boston? Is he not?
Yeah,
He's from around that area, isn't he? That was
Yeah.
always the big shows I can recall. So
Massachusetts, Boston at this point.
Yeah.
People refer to them as the same.
I just thought you were going to tell me off my geography there, but so then traditionally that northeast corner would be pretty good for them, but if it wasn't for that, then yes, they are stabilizing in their numbers. And it'll be interesting because the whole business with TKO is based on consistent growth. You sell out, higher prices, sell out, higher prices. And wrestling just doesn't work in that way. And you can get away with it with destination shows. And so that it works better with the pay-per-views. So with the pay-per-views, when you're moving some of them to Europe or you're moving into Australia or Japan or wherever else, or running so many Saudi shows, that works better because you're creating 4 or 5 destination shows in the US and Canada. Your Elimination Chamber, your SummerSlam, your WrestleMania. So I do think it works better for that than it does for TV. I don't think people see a huge value in TV that's not specials currently.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's going to be it'll be interesting to see how they do. So they're going to use both sets of talent across both sets of TV as a turn year. Wade Keller reports that both shows will be will be 3 hours. USA will definitely go 3 hours of SmackDown, and Raw will be around 3 hours. And that will be a lot of content.
Mm-hmm.
So we will see how that goes. But that's the turn of the
I'm
year.
looking forward to hearing other podcasters complain about it.
Yeah, we don't have to watch it. It's great.
No, fuck it.
Like the best thing about this is like we don't have to watch everything. Like, we don't want to watch everything. I'm not recapping anything.
No.
I don't need to watch Rampage on a Friday night when. Sorry, I should be nasty to Rampage. I don't need to watch NXT. I don't need to watch Main Event. I don't need to watch MLW, although you have to find MLW because it will change its location 20 times. But it's like, I've got 2 rabbits making noise now. I can't believe this tonight.
They're excited to hear you talk about wrestling.
I got them a carrot cottage. It's just like,
Oh,
yeah, they're just destroying it, aren't you? Bad shadow. Right, we're complete our tour around the world now. Should we talk about Kenny Omega?
Let's do it.
Let's talk about some fun things. Mr. Kenny Omega. So Kenny Omega returned at Power Struggle in New Japan.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Power
Yep.
Struggle in New Japan. And he got a cool promo, actually. And he felt like he has such an aura in Japan that you just feel it straight away, like a different energy. And we had like the interview segments and things that they put out on their social media with Tanahashi and the things that he'd done. But he came out and did this promo, and I'm going to say thank you to Joe, Feel Good Elite, who translates a lot of the Japanese interviews and things for us for this. But he did his promo, and he says, I want to fight some of the new wrestlers in Japan, and he's hoping to be cleared for January 5th, and he wants to return in that ring. And that was kind of a surprising one because having a match back in Japan made sense, but having your first match back in New Japan when you are an AEW wrestler and AEW are crying out for that controversy bit. So, we talk about the way WWE got hot. They had, someone that got hot organically in Sami Zayn and they pivoted. Yep. And the other big thing was they had a controversy, which is something we talk about in sports media in terms of, what raises. So, for example, for football attendance, we talk about the Euros. When England won the Euros, it raised all the attendances in the league afterwards because it creates additional interest that wouldn't normally be there. And that's what this could be. So theirs was Cody Rhodes, right? Cody Rhodes jumping from AEW to WWE was a controversy that helped to turn their business, along with Sami Zayn getting organically hot with the Bloodline story. This is the best available controversy bounce that any company can get right now. We talked about Tanahashi last time and how he got stabbed and his comeback show was a sold-out show, and that really helped to launch him and start that movement of out of Enochiism and out of the Dark Ages. It took years, but there it was. This is it. And this isn't just any wrestler. This is the wrestler that's hit the biggest heights in your company without the shock value or the gimmicks of anybody. This is Kenny Omega, the guy that was able to, get people to subscribe to a world service when that still was kind of in its it's kind of infancy, and just follow him and to see what he does, who will sell out buildings, who holds all the attendance records for New Japan still in the US, who sold out Madison Square Garden without even being announced. This is Kenny Omega, and he is returning when your company is talking about turnaround, to New Japan Pro Wrestling. So his first match back after this illness that could have killed him, legitimately could have killed him. And, you know, and the thing is, I think I saw Sean Ross Sapp today said that there's people in AEW that think Kenny could have a match back there first. And I would be very, very careful with that now, because on their website, you know, the announcement that they ran, they literally have it said as Kenny Omega will step into a pro wrestling ring in anger for the first time in 396 days and a New Japan ring for the first time in 2 years exactly. Will he prevail against the violent madman, I love that, in the Tokyo Dome? So in Japan, once you advertise something as what it is in specific, if you take that away, it's like formal apology time. It's no-go. False advertising, the things that we get away with in the States and the UK, like just do it. It's not a thing there. So once you've committed to that, and it looks like they've told New Japan that, because that's part of their official kind of promotion now for this match, then that's going to happen there. But the decision to do that feels to me, from an AEW perspective, completely, utterly insane. And there's lots of people say, I don't think it matters. Of course it fucking matters. It's his first match back globally, and last time when he went and wrestled Will Ospreay in Tokyo Dome, it got more attention than anything else that happened to him that year, including his comeback, which we'll talk about in a second, Brawl Out, anything else they did on AEW television, anything else they did on AEW pay-per-view, any of it. No, that was the one that got the most attention. And it's like, why are you not presenting this man differently? If this was MJF, right? And this is the thing. But the difference is, if I'm Kenny Omega, I get it. I can get exactly why you would want to return in Japan.
Yeah.
You will be promoted properly. They've ran multiple videos with you already. They've given you that live appearance. They've done the backstage angle. They involved the news bits. You've done interviews. In fact, it's probably got more energy behind it than anything in AEW at the moment. And it's like, I get that. And when you came back last time, you came back, what, in quarter seven? He's a quarter seven boy. On a show where the guy challenging for the heavyweight title is cutting shoot promos on a project that you've worked on for 3 years.
Yeah.
And you have to go in after your match in a rare main event, quote unquote, and you have to say, you know, as long as we're here, we're going to deliver this. And we're not selfish and we're not that. And the next day, nobody is talking about you coming back. Nobody. Right. They're talking about this. And then what were you going to come back and do? Oh, you were going to come back and you were going to headline the B show of Rampage when that went on a live tour with the trios titles. Fine. Okay. Right. That's the way we're going to bring back Kenny Omega, our most successful world champion that we've ever had in this company. And as someone that really embraces the word alternative. And then you know what we'll do? We'll bring him back a second time after he gets suspended. And he's the one that most people think should never have been suspended. And we'll make him a mute. To the point where he grabs a microphone at Winter is Coming. And basically tells everybody how annoyed he is about the world.
Yep.
And then we make him a mute all the way through to when they lose the titles. We don't show nothing of his Wrestle Kingdom match with Ospreay, even though it's the biggest thing in wrestling at that time. We don't make anything on it. And then eventually, once they lose to the trios titles at Revolution, oh, you know what, we'll do the Vikingo match and we'll promote it. Oh, guess what? It'll do one of the best, you know, ratings of the year week on week. And it'll get rid of all the competition. To the point where when CM Punk blows up a week later and some of your talents say, maybe we should go with Omega. Look what he can deliver. And then you don't. And then you culminate that after you bring Punk back at Forbidden Door, where you do a rematch of the most successful match that year that sold out that building, because the rumor that match did sell out that building. We were there. How many Kenny Omega shirts did we see? It was just full of Kenny Omega stuff everywhere. And you can't even put it in the main event. Even when Bryan Danielson lobbies you for it to be the main event and that you love Will Ospreay and you work under the premise that, you know, you don't want a New Japan talent to close your show as a winner, and everyone in your company thinks it's fucking bollocks. And what you forgot is this building and everything around it and the atmosphere and everything. What are anyone going to remember from that show? They remember Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. Remember fuck all else. They won't. In 10 years, they won't remember anything else. There's some great stuff on that show. There's some great things that we enjoyed. But that's what everyone was there for, and that's what everyone will remember. And this match that should have been bigger than the previous one never felt like it because you didn't promote it, you didn't build it. And it's just like, that's the year you gave him. He came back after breaking his body for 2 companies during the pandemic, to on sales going on sale when they go back on the road, for the huge Hangman program that was hitting 0.7s in the minute by minutes, which nobody's hit with a working program since. You deliver all these numbers, you deliver all these things, and then you come back and that's how you're treated. That's not MJF getting the opening, quarter hour and advertised for 2 weeks before things for each promo, having his match advertised for 2 weeks with commercial free for next TV match he's back through, or the pay-per-view match, or an hour of TV to do I'm going to put in every spot in with Will Ospreay because I want everyone to love me. It's none of that. It's, I stick you on quarter 7 and now you're a fucking mute. And you're the most successful guy we've ever had in this company. Maybe not in longevity like Jon Moxley, but in terms of the heights that you can reach. That's how you treated him. That was how they treated him. So yes, I understand him wanting to go and do it from New Japan because he knows he's going to be treated like the star he is. And to be honest, you look from an AEW perspective and he'll say, it's kayfabe stuff, I don't think AEW needs me right now, whatever. And it's like, one, you look at that as a fan and you just think, what the fuck are you talking about? I can't think of anything worse to say. Of course they need you right now. Have you looked at this product? But secondly, it's like, what happens if you do come back right now? Are you going to be the most over babyface again, like you were at the start of 2023, and then they're going to throw you to one side? You're going to stick you in a tag team with Hangman to get you both out of the way? Because they keep bringing him up with him. I don't think that's definitely not a red herring there. It's like, what are you going to do if he becomes the most over man? Are you going to pivot? Are you going to change these plans with this mock story? Are you going to really get behind him? Are you going to use this boost to then elevate others because he's going to have a natural boost that no one else is going to be able to have? Or are you going to bring back Adam Copeland and all these other WWE guys that you bring in and spotlight them heavily and then put him in the background? A guy that really represents this alternative. It represented this vision, represented everything that changed in this industry. There is no one, if I think about how wrestling has developed in the last 10 years, that makes me feel that way than Kenny Omega. And there's no one when I watch a big match that makes me feel kind of more in the moment, or that feeling that I chased, that I've talked to you about chasing, the reason why I flew out to Toronto, than Kenny Omega. So what are you going to be? This is that thing. What are you going to be? Are you going to be that company? Are you going to be a different company where Kenny Omega feels like he can be a star? Or do you not want to bring him back because it might upset the Moxley story or whatever is going on now? Or it might take some of Max's time or upset anybody else. And he won't be as, like OC, like some of the other guys, he won't be as demanding as some of those on that. What are you doing? Whenever you do bring him back, there needs to be weeks of promotion for it. If you just bring him back as a surprise, you can just get fucked, frankly. It's Kenny Omega. This is the best shot you've got. If you're getting a shockwave, you bring him back on the debut. You make it a huge thing. Even though he's coming back in New Japan, because now we don't even have to pretend that Dynasty's an AEW show now, which is great, because I'm sick of that. And it's like, make him important. You've probably got one more shot at this, and you need it. As much as everyone pretends you don't, you keep talking about you need it. Don't fuck it up. For the love of God, don't fuck it up. We've been waiting years to see the kind of presentation of Kenny Omega to match where it does everywhere else. He wants it. He talks about how he wants to be presented. I don't want to see him stood in the background. I don't want to see anyone else stood behind him either. But it's like, you either get behind him, or hey, let's just get behind the latest WWE guy that we bring in, who might be great, but he's a mid-carder who cannot reach that height. And you need something. Stop with the fucking stories of trying to make everybody Team AEW, rah-rah bollocks. It's simple. You have Kenny Omega, you present him like Kenny Omega, you push Kenny Omega. That's it. You make somebody off Kenny Omega. And then you push them. You don't fucking bury them like Takeshita. Right, I'm done.
Listen, you're saying what should happen, but I think you and I both don't have a lot of optimism about it. And I don't think Kenny does either, because I think if he did, we wouldn't be returning in New Japan.
Well, the funny thing is if you look at the other AEW returns this year as well, you're kind of like, yeah, I get it. So Max had his big, all singing, all dancing return, then got killed by Kendrick Lamar, which was kind of funny. Moxley comes back and obviously like jumps over everybody into the title picture. Danielson comes back and hits every big story and then wins, the belt at Wembley. And then you look at like, okay, so who else come back? Jamie Hayter came back and does what? Just
Nothing.
a regular person on the roster. I love the responses to that, by the way. They're always like, why is everyone crying about Jamie Hayter? It's like, because they expect her to come back and to be treated like Mercedes is, like a star, like a player, like someone who's a player in a division. And instead we just treated her like another wrestler. They're not saying she needs to be on TV every week. They're saying this is what you've done, because that's what you've done. Hobbs, what's Hobbs doing now? That worked well, didn't it? That was a good comeback. I'm not even mentioning Hangman because we've
covered it.
We've covered it endlessly. But if you are him and you're looking at all these people returning, Takeshita after the G1, especially these people that you mentored, that were your kind of calls, and in the women as well, in the division that he kind of thing. Britt, that's another one you can look at. You wouldn't exactly... Sheeta,
just shows up to put people over now.
Exactly. Yeah, the ace, that's not an ace. They don't treat it like an ace. So why would you be so excited to come back to AEW and trust them with it? Could you trust them with it? Do they believe in you as a top person in the way that they should with the results that you get? Because we always know that, we've heard it many a time, that doesn't always matter as much as it should. So I don't blame him. I thought it was interesting. Did you see the what Excalibur said about...
Yes.
Go on.
Yes, this got brought up last night. I don't remember which match it was during, but Excalibur talked about, they flashed up a graphic for Wrestle Dynasty. Excalibur talked about it as a New Japan show. He specifically called it the New Japan show Wrestle Dynasty, and he said it's New Japan's version of Forbidden Door, which I thought was pretty interesting because one of the biggest comments anytime anyone has brought up the fact that Kenny is not coming back to AEW, people are like, oh no, it's Wrestle Dynasty, it's an AEW show, it's a joint show. So the fact that Excalibur was like, it's not a joint show, I thought was kind of fascinating.
I thought it was hilarious.
It kind of nipped that right in the fucking bud.
I was like, great, I don't have to hear that for like another month. I'm fucking sick of that.
You'll still hear it.
Look, it's been true though. AEW, Forbidden Door has always been an AEW show with New Japan wrestlers on it. And New Japan treat it that way. Their important event in that month is Dominion. And then they will promote it. I mean, they run like a little 20-minute segment. But at the end of the day, this is a pay-per-view that in the first year, 5,000 Japanese people ordered and is at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning for them.
Right.
So it's not made for their consumption. And when you look at the promotional materials in Japan for this, other than that tiny little graphic of AEW on the Dynasty actual logo, it's like New Japan Presents. It doesn't read as an AEW show, and it's not one AEW are actively promoting. If you go on AEW Ticks on their schedule, you're not going to find Wrestle Dynasty in the way that you would Forbidden Door on the Japanese site. It doesn't exist. Right. They're going to mention it on their TV, but they can't mention it too closely because they've got World's End, then they've got the simulcast debut of Dynamite, and then literally 3 or 4 hours before, or maybe less, depending on how bad my time difference is doing thinking about Japanese time, they are going to run straight from Collision in Carolina, I think it's Bojangles Coliseum, Charlotte, North Carolina, right into Dynasty. So they're not even, all their top kind of TV, Tony and that, they're not going to be at Dynasty. They're going to be at Collision in Charlotte, North Carolina. So their priorities are these events. This isn't a joint show, and Forbidden Door was never a joint show. There might be some revenue sharing, but it's not. It's an AEW production, and this is a New Japan production in the Tokyo Dome that is going to use AEW wrestlers. And I think their aim was to kind of make it like to bring back a lot of the kind of 2018, 2017 kind of golden age talent and use that as a selling point. And Kenny obviously is the main selling point of that. So, and it's not going to be on Max. It's not going to be on pay-per-view in the US. It's going to just be on New Japan World. In terms of how it's seen in Japan, I think one of the most disappointing things is it's not going to be on TV Asahi. It's not going to be on TV in Japan. It will just be on World. But yeah, so the 5th, it's a New Japan show. It's not an AEW show. It's a New Japan show with AEW wrestlers on it, just like Forbidden Door is the other way around. Thank God we don't have to lie about it anymore. It's good fun.
And it's fine.
Yep.
Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. That's
how it should
do
work.
that.
Yep.
Yes, they're two different audiences. It's the time zone thing alone makes it fucking impossible.
Yep.
Right? Like, good. Like, do this. But, like, this, I think the constant refrain that it's okay that Kenny, there's nothing wrong that Kenny is going back to New Japan first. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. And it's like, guys, there's I don't know that it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're paying attention, it's a sign that maybe things are not perfect and maybe they'll get better and things will be fixed. But it's also a thing you could raise an eyebrow at. Like, it's not necessarily something for a 5-alarm fire, but
you can look at it. Look, I mean, you can look at it. It's nice that AEW are allowing them to use one of the most valuable things they could have for their business after taking some of their stars. But you can also look at it as, is this the best way for AEW to kind of capitalize on Kenny Omega as a star? Maybe, if they followed it up perfectly. But after last time, you don't really feel that could be the case. And is it going to be as impactful as if Kenny Omega is coming back in your own company and you devote so much, of your time to promote it? Of course it's not. That's your home audience. And then you're asking your home audience to pay to another provider to see his first match back.
Right.
And there's a lot of people just going to be like, he's an AEW wrestler. Same way as, when John Moxley dropped the belt to Tetsuya Naito and the other way, there was a New Japan fans in Japan were like, it's Monday morning at 9 a.m. We're not going to see this. This is our belt. And got very annoyed as well around the Hobbs booking when they'd already had a kind of title defense in play for Don Taku. So it's these little things that you might not think about, because if you watch everything, then it doesn't concern you, because you think, oh, great, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to see Kenny Omega's return. I'm going to watch it on New Japan World. But if you are primarily an AEW fan, and we're seeing more and more of that, especially as they produce more content, then it is a bigger thing to be like, oh, now I've got to watch it on a different service. And he's not coming back in AEW, just as we had this story where he was written off by Okada, and we've wasted Okada's first loss as well. So, and now it looks like, are we curtailing that? What are we doing? We don't know, because of the change with the Moxley story. So I can see that perspective now in a way that you probably didn't think of it previously. But, and then from a personal perspective, it being in the Dome and that feeling and knowing you're going to be there in that atmosphere, I think it's incredible for me, because it's saying, I know they're going to do it right. Yeah. And it's great for Gabe. Gabe Kidd, for if you buy into the character, if you hate the character, and he obviously overdoes the madman stuff. But it's a huge opportunity for him. We watched him when he started wrestling, when he was coming through in Nottingham, and it's like a little bit of a proud stuff, he was kind of Joe Connor's prodigy. But and also it's probably going to lead into his face turn and the War Dogs turning on him. So there is room to move that into New Japan. But I think it's an interesting event. The lineup isn't stellar otherwise. Ricochet is your political victim to lose to Zack. You've got Claudio going over to Shota. He could beat Shota. Yota Tsuji's going to face Jack Perry. So Jack Perry is probably going to drop that fall there. So again, it's like the political game. So the expectation of having like 4 champions in the women's tournament in the 4-way. Right. Which I heard. Was that Dave? That was Dave. Yeah.
Yes. Dave wants women's champions.
Come on now,
or else it's a waste of time. Okay,
so who has lost on Forbidden Door in straight singles matches from New Japan? Tanahashi, who's on my screen right now, actually. Shingo. Yep. Who else? Who else have we got? Is there anybody
from the New Japan side?
New Japan side, straight singles. Who else has lost? I have to bring cage match up on this. Let's think. There isn't that many. Tanahashi's lost twice, right? So he lost to Moxley, he lost to Punk. That was twice in singles.
He didn't lose to Punk.
Not Punk. Moxley and MJF.
Yes.
They're interchangeable.
Freudian slip there, Jesus.
Okada, who's obviously gone to AEW. He lost to Danielson, right? Most of the ones are deals. So Zack lost to Claudio. Yep. Beat Cassidy. So on the AEW side, it's Cassidy. And he's lost twice now. Lost to Ospreay, lost to Zack.
Yes.
Yep.
He won the 4-way.
Yeah, well, I'm not counting the 4-ways, because 4-ways
he
are
lost
cheap
both his
ways
single
out.
Matches,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you've got on the other side, and then Jack Perry, who's going to go there and lose again. You can see where these names going here, can't you? And then Moxley, but that was part of a deal. So you had your crossover deals of 1-on-1 sort of thing. So the politics of this is really difficult. And they will not give up. The idea of, sending Okada if he's going to win the C2 or whatever, or if not, they're not going to send him to lose to Zack on that show. They're not doing it. And they're not going to send Mercedes to lose to somebody on that show. It's like, that's not how it works. So it's all a political kind of thing, and that's why you're going to get your Jack Perry's going to lose to Yota Tsuji. Why it's Ricochet going to lose to Zack, and not somebody more high profile that you think that event needs. It probably needs some mega tags. We'll see what's coming with that. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting card. It's a very early start for anyone in the UK. Late night start on a Saturday for that. But that's a Sunday. On the Saturday, we have most of the Wrestle Kingdom card now. And the main event is Zack Sabre Jr. and Shota Umino, which we thought it would be, but we was kind of fearful of. And it's interesting to see the response to that. It was kind of like, once it's actually on paper. And but Fraser, who's on our Discord but also on JCast, he wrote a list of things that Shota Umino has done this year.
It's a good list.
It is.
It's well compiled.
So this is your Wrestle Kingdom main event world title challenger. And this year, I've called this The Curious Case of Shota Umino. I quite like that. Yeah.
We're proud of ourselves today.
I don't know about that. This is because we didn't get a time limit. Thanks, Leah.
No,
Look what's happened now. So he lost to Evil and went 0-5 in title challenges. Jack Perry knocked him out on round 1 of the New Japan Cup. That was a diamond. Like, the crowd hated him, and I was at that show. He lost his title shot to Moxley, which he's 0-6 against. He had no big moments domestically. He's still presented like he's Moxley's young boy, April through June, compared to Tsuji winning the New Japan Cup. He had no main events in the G1, which some believe was a punishment, but there we are. He was knocked out before the final match, the final night. He wins a random gimmick Rambo, which is like, for anyone that's not seen a New Japan, it's just like a battle royal, essentially, with people coming in, kind of, have like the Rumble thing. He starts carrying around a fake IWGP title belt at Fandrew. That's like CM Punk Made in Heaven stuff, huh? He starts doing an unauthentic politician gimmick of kissing babies. And now, in World Tag League, he's teaming with Honma, which some will find ironic. I'll tell you that one later. And he's got no main events in World Tag League, and he's the challenger for the world title. Now, there is this theory that this is a whole losing thing and it's going to play into a huge heel turn and he's going to, go into the Naito thing. But in terms of setting up your Wrestle Kingdom main event challenger, it's certainly different.
Not a great job.
It's certainly different. And yes, it's a Saturday. And when we originally talked about Wrestle Kingdom, we talked about the prospect of having the juniors main event because it's a Saturday. And they were main eventing the juniors on the back of Naito being in the semi-main. They did it in Aichi. They did it at Dominion with Moxley being in the semi-main. They were doing the world title as a secondary match to the juniors. And then Desperado got injured. So we'll never know if that was the plan ever or not. But you can get away with it on a Saturday. But this feels like a big risk until you realise there could be Naito versus Hiromu underneath, and everything in World Tag League seems to point that way. Yeah. But I wouldn't want to follow that if I was Zack and Umino. So it's going to be a very interesting way of looking at it. You've got Takeshita and Shingo, which will, your kind of international fan base is probably the match they're going to be most interested in. And people like me will be holding a little cat. And I can't believe that. If that match, as soon as that match happens, right, I'm doing a full we're going to have a huge sing-song. I'm just going to run around and I'm going to cause some havoc. But so that's Wrestle Kingdom. So Wrestle Kingdom builds have just been kind of weak for quite a few years now. So I think 2018 is probably the last really, really great Wrestle Kingdom build. That was Kenny and Chris Jericho and Naito and Okada. Everything else has had issues or felt kind of very convoluted. And it's interesting because we look at the build for AEW pay-per-view and we're talking about the build for it and how much it matters or how much it impacts how we feel about it. And then we go watch a New Japan show and we're like, it doesn't really fucking matter because it's like Naito's getting the roll call, I don't care. Or it's Kenny and Will Ospreay, I don't care. And he's so hypocritical in some ways. But the way they do their storytelling is so much simpler most of the time that you kind of have less expectation on that emotional thing on it and you just kind of build into the character. So I wonder why that's so different, why we look at Wrestle Kingdom in that way. Is it because we see it like a WrestleMania style thing where we have this expectation of it as an event that we forget some of the things that lead into it? That's an interesting thing to think about. But yeah, this is definitely one of those cards where I don't know how to feel. I don't know. If, for me personally, if we get Hiromu and Naito, I won't care about anything else on that card. Waiting years for this match. But yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see what kind of reception it gets. And that's the big thing about doing the Kenny thing on New Japan World that probably helps him for the 5th, is that if, for live kind of gate and ticket sales, the date, the event, and then Hiromu and Naito might cover the 4th. But for World outside of Japan, that might not be enough. So now if you have Kenny's return individually on there, that is probably your big New Japan World incentive for signing up. So that's where it's probably extra valuable in that sense. We've talked about lots of kind of nice things. Let's do the depressing thing towards the end.
So Donald Trump won the United States presidential election. This has wrestling impacts, not just because Linda McMahon is now currently a potential appointee as the Secretary of Education, but also it is going to impact any potential criminal proceedings in the federal court in the Southern District of New York, as the current GA for that district is stepping down and will be replaced by someone Donald Trump picks. Given the people that Donald Trump has chosen for his cabinet, it's difficult to believe that anyone will be prosecuted for any sexual crime in a federal court in his term, but you never know. It's likely that they will drop the case against Vince McMahon from a criminal perspective. There are still the civil lawsuits occurring, and one of the things about the cabinet discussion and the number of people with active sex crime allegations against them, not necessarily criminal ones. It's not just Linda McMahon with the Ring Boys scandal. It's also Gertz, who quit. I can't even fucking say the guy's name.
Gertz. Is that how you say it? Gertz?
Gates, whatever. Hesketh, who is up for Secretary of Defense, has his own issues. He has a credible sexual assault or sexual issues. There's a bunch of them. So because of that, the Ring Boy scandal stuff and the lawsuit made an absolute ton of news this week. And that is still out there. It's still open as a lawsuit, as is the Janelle Grant case. The Janelle Grant case will, I think the moratorium, because of the federal criminal case, is up fairly soon, right? December, I think it is?
Yeah, December 11th.
Yeah. But we are still going to have the lawsuits. We'll see what happens. I think obviously there's going to be more of a settlement on those. Is much more likely now for both of those cases, especially without the criminal case to push against. And I think it's difficult to imagine that you'd see more victims being willing to come forward without the protection of anybody on the criminal side. So we'll see. And then it's also worth pointing out with the American criminal justice system that our civil lawsuits and our criminal lawsuits are very different. You cannot be pardoned from a civil lawsuit. So if if the lawsuit does move forward with Vince McMahon, either with the Janelle Grant lawsuit or with the Ring Boys case, and either is possible, that if there is a finding against Vince McMahon, Linda McMahon, or the WWE, there's no pardon possible. There's no criminal time or anything like that. It would just simply be a financial award. That's all that you can do in a civil case. But there's no pardon, and there's no way that these guys could get off or away from this. But that's assuming that it moves forward in court, which is not unlikely, probably. There's other issues. Obviously, one of the big points of Donald Trump's campaign was deportation of immigrants and not allowing immigrants in the country. That certainly has something to do with visas for wrestlers. That could be a larger issue moving forward.
And it's been an issue for the past few years as well.
Yeah,
It's been but this is going to make it worse. Stephen Miller is a key part of his new cabinet. You say cabinet? What do you call your thing? You have a
cabinet.
You do call it cabinet. Okay, I was just like, that's what we call. But he was primarily responsible for the Muslim ban during the previous Trump administration, and he'll be looking at kind of similar policies from what's kind of coming out of Washington at the moment. And this will affect AEW more than it will likely affect WWE, because WWE make a lot of the people that come from abroad take up residency. So they move to the US and take up residency, whereas a number of AEW wrestlers, Pac, Ospreay, currently Okada, I'm sure there's numerous others, that fly into the US and aren't residents. Even Kenny Omega, he's not even a resident, is he? So he had the issues with his he had his issues with visa. You remember last year around the Best of Seven, where they had to kind of half some beg to get him into LA. There's unfortunately it's going to make things more difficult in that aspect, amongst all the other things that we're going to see, and I think there's an expectation of it. One of the other things that's kind of happened as a kind of consequence of that is something we've seen with social media. So the kind of increased fragmentation that we've seen across mediums and all forms has increased with an exodus of, let's be honest, primarily a lot of kind of left-wing thinking people to Blue Sky.
Yep.
And it's been interesting because Blue Sky has been predominantly an AEW platform in a wrestling sense since then. And what was really interesting, so if you think about, Triple H at the UFC event, and, there's a huge alignment between TKO and this current kind of administration coming in, and everyone that's around that. So not just like, Donald Trump himself, but someone like Elon Musk, which they have to deal with Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, for like the WWE speed thing. So does that mean, and we've only seen, I think, is Austin Creed the only one registered for Blue Sky out of their roster, I believe?
I don't know. See, you're on top of this with me. I don't know that I've seen anybody
and he was, when it was like a very young operation, not in its current kind of exodus. So it's quite interesting that there's no real WWE contracted talent on Blue Sky, and they're not really using it as a preferential platform because they've now kind of aligned themselves with Twitter. And you can say that TKO has aligned itself with this administration and with more right-wing thinking, because they were at the Republican convention. They did the speech when he got elected. UFCs are basically rallies, right, at this point.
Yeah.
So I think you can look at it like that, but it's different. And the conversations are different. Is it because we've lost the bots? How do you feel about kind of the more fragmentation now in that kind of wrestling community, where we have a lot more of the kind of left-wing thinking, and that has translated into, because it's the big cities and we know the distribution of fans, that's changed to more of an AEW base on Blue Sky. And then we're seeing more of that WWE base on Twitter. What do you think that does to conversation and kind of the industry?
So that's one of those things where I'm coming at this probably from a bunch of different directions. One of the things that I get sort of depressed by on Blue Sky, I'll say this, is how often any negativity or criticism of AEW is met with, block that person, mute that person, you don't have to listen to it, which I find kind of depressing. And I think I even had somebody who, was saying that the WrestleTix guy has a Blue Sky account, and somebody was like, block him. We don't ever need to know about ticket prices now or anything like that. And that kind of bummed me out because I like business metrics.
Yep.
You and I love business metrics.
Bitches.
Bitchness. We love that shit. But I also cannot be ignorant of the fact that people have taken that information, just that raw data, and have used it to sort of be unrelentingly negative about AEW.
Yeah, they weaponize it. Yep.
They weaponize it. And the biggest problem that I have with Twitter right now and the way that Twitter has changed is that you can't block people.
Yep.
And, I'm not interested in blocking someone I disagree with. I'm friends with people I disagree with. I love you. We talk about this all the time. I fucking love a disagreement. I love when you and I don't agree. I also don't want to be subjected to abuse or harassment.
Yes.
I don't want to get DMs from fucking weirdos. And, we get them. And I think, Lyric has pointed this out quite frequently. Women and people of color get those at a much greater percentage than a lot of white guys do. And I also think there are a lot of white guys who don't quite understand sometimes that the way that they're engaging is sort of bordering on a little bit harassing. I think everyone deserves to have the experience in a hobby that they want to have. If they don't want to listen to what someone has to say, then I feel like I'm a big fan of blocking. I never understood why somebody would ever view blocking as something that is makes you weak or whatever. I think you should be able to block somebody for any reason whatsoever, right? If I don't, some people just annoy me. There's nothing wrong with them. They're nice people. I don't disagree with them, but they're just fucking irritating to have to see on my feed. I'm going to block them or maybe mute them. I should have the ability to do that. Right?
Yep.
At the same time, you can have, with the way that Blue Sky is set up, there is certainly the possibility for some abuse of like the group block function. Blue Sky has lists where you can subscribe to a list and say, for example, Trish creates a list of people who don't like Naito. I thought she'd like that one. So she creates a list of Naito haters.
Rich Latta, you're going on.
Rich Latta, obviously the number one person on that list. James. Or Leah from Tunnel Talk creates a list of people who don't like Chuck Taylor. James Boyd at the top of that list, obviously, right?
We're just bullying James now.
Just bullying him now. I could subscribe to that list and believe that it is going to be a list of Naito haters and be cool with that. And then suddenly somebody adds a bunch of random people who really don't hate Naito, but, I add, So I think that's one of the things I have to be careful about, right? Subscribing to mass block lists, not a bad idea. Just know where you're getting that stuff from and know who's included on that. And I think, you're allowed to not want to hear people talk negatively about something that you're into. If you really like AEW and you don't want to deal with negativity about it, then that's absolutely perfectly fine. Block away. I do agree with Trish that hearing different opinions, and as long as they're presented respectfully and kindly, honestly, like, I'm cool with it, right? But like, I get that that's not for everyone. I do think that we sort of run the risk of losing something by moving into echo chambers. But the problem that I have right now as an American is that many of the echo chambers, or the people that don't want to be in echo chambers, are Nazis. And I don't really want to share a space with them. So I that's the kind of happy medium between these things. And I think it's got a little bit of nuance to it. I think that it will be interesting. There's sort of been, at times on Blue Sky, a relentless positivity that the cynical me...
As a British person, it's a lot, all right?
It's a lot. As a non-British person who's a little bit older and maybe a little bit more cynical, it's a lot sometimes, like I said. But that said, I have noticed the tone of the conversation, and I have enjoyed the tone of the conversation on Blue Sky. The people who are presenting things that I disagree with, for the most part, are presenting them in a kind of mild tone. They're looking for a conversation, where on Twitter, it's just this sort of outrage, anger that people come out with that I'm kind of like, oh, maybe we didn't realize that we were responding this way because it's so socialized to this environment that everybody is like,
Yeah, and there's still an element of it because it still employs things like the quote tree, which is something that just needs to die, because it encourages that kind of pile-on thing. And it doesn't matter. There's I read an incredible thread by a guy called Luke Trill, which is on Blue Sky, and it's on Twitter. And he talked about the balkanization of kind of these social media platforms. And his key thing is that, when we do this, we have this like purist way of viewing things in these platforms. Right. So everything has to fit between this tiny quota, and we take things that are normal, like numbers, and we make them like an enemy as part of that. And then we lose kind of understanding of what's happening. So something like Trump getting elected, you can be completely unhappy about it. Like, honestly, we are, but you want to understand how something's happened, and instead we just reject it and call everybody idiots, and that's how we work. And it's that purist thing of, because everyone should think about things in this way. So I've obviously been, I've made it quite clear, I don't like the fact that we don't discuss anything anymore. It becomes like this tribalistic thing where you're not, I love this John Sopel quote, but he says you're not looking for information, you're looking for affirmation.
Yes.
And I just think that's a, news agents actually covered like the Linda McMahon stuff this week, and there was wrestling on it, and I turned it on and was like, what the hell's going on? Number one news podcast in the UK. But I think that's very much true. And, you've got to look at what is the value of us even having those discussions in them settings? Are you able to do that with the case limits? Are you able to get across your points? Is there value in those kind of discussions at all? I don't know. I think the way the media is now, and especially with like Twitter, with like the algorithms and everything like that and the bots, it's kind of doesn't feel worthwhile. And we use it more as like an info source to kind of put out information on things, or I just like randomly posting train pictures now because I'm not getting anything else out of it. I think that it's different for an organization and how they look at it. So for something like AEW, for example, they shouldn't be listening to it and I'm thinking that's their entire audience. No. They have to diversify their kind of portfolio in terms of, you need to be monitoring, you need to be looking at Twitter, you need to be looking at Threads, you need to be looking at TikTok, you need to be looking at Instagram. God help you, you got to look at Facebook. You need to be taking your, they put the surveys out after each live show, which is great because you're getting direct fan feedback about all that other stuff. You need to be listening to your audience in all these locations because you've got this balkanization, this fragmentation of the fan base, which is, what we're seeing in culture in general. So you've got to respond to that and you need to be kind of using all these different mediums, but you can't just be on one. And Blue Sky is going to give you an advantage in that way if WWE are unable to kind of do that, and you've got this platform where you can not just market to people, people can discuss it without feeling like they're under constant siege. And that hopefully should reduce some of the defensiveness that we get on the other side as well. But you can't make that everything you think people hear, because that's what you're doing. So they do. I mean, Brian Alvarez spoke on it this week. It doesn't help them when they hear that echo chamber stuff and everything's great all the time. No, they work off that.
But I also think.
Go on.
I think the negative echo chamber doesn't help them either.
No,
I think it's one of the problems that you've seen with AEW is that it's difficult at times to even have a nuanced conversation about any issues that are going on, because so many people are so fucking negative about the tiniest stuff that it's like, well, yes, there's a problem, but it's not this, right? It's the same. I'd say the same. We've said the same thing about like Dave Meltzer. Like, you could have criticisms of Dave Meltzer, but the criticisms that you see in the wild are so fucking insane that it's like you want to defend the guy because Jesus Christ, who would say this weird shit about him, right? Instead of focusing on the things that you could actually say, hey, this could be a problem, or we could talk about this. I think I'm less concerned about it from a wrestling standpoint than I am from like a general culture standpoint.
Yeah, but I think I mix them up as well.
Yeah. But I do get it, and but I also can't blame people, because there's a point where disagreement becomes abuse, and it's like, with Twitter, it was really getting out of control over there. Yeah,
and I just think we really have to think about what our platforms is to. I mean, for us, and if you're discussing wrestling, I mean, we have this platform, and we can then explain our viewpoints and justify them and provide evidence and show you those sort of things within this platform, and then we can advertise it there. We don't need to have those discussions with everybody on these platforms. No, we can provide a medium that makes hopefully has more value. Hopefully.
Listen, on a bad day, you never know. Well, that's one of those things.
But that's the idea.
They always talk about that, right? What are your of means of communication? Text-based communication is the most one rife for miscommunication, because you can't hear tone. The words are being said. You can't see body language, right? So, Trish, you're great. Trish, you're great is very different than Trish, you're great. Like,
what are you doing? Is that your Tony the Tiger impression?
That was my sarcasm impression, but I guess I did Tony the Tiger. I'm losing it. Regardless, we're a little bit of a better. We're great. We're at a slight advantage because we have at least two words and tone, but you can't see our body language, and you're not gonna. So.
Yeah, someone asked me about that yesterday. They were like, do you do like live things? I'm like, no, because that would mean I'd have to do effort on a Sunday. It's my day off, and I have
a bra on. I mean, come on.
I'm not doing that. Like,
no,
I don't like. That's not to say like the people on our network that do that. I actually know, fantastic.
Respect.
It's respect to Taylor Swift for going on Twitch and doing their thing. Respect to James and Rich for doing theirs. To the Keeping It Strong style guys for doing theirs, and Matt and everyone else. It's like fantastic. We ain't doing it. Like I get in for football on Sunday. It's like I ain't even. It's
like recap podcast. Good for you. Not happening over here.
They're like, I feel sorry for you if you have to watch all these shows. It's like, spoiler, we don't. No,
I just think recaps in general lead to like the least interesting form of analysis.
I think this is thing. So we talk about wrestling having too much content, but maybe there's too much content on how we analyze it as well, because we look at everything in a very small window. So yeah, we've done some stuff on this show around Full Gear, but it kind of covers that whole period, because that's the culmination of that period, and that's how we viewed it. And you know, I'm trying to look at things in that sort of way rather than instantaneous reaction to one little thing. And that seems to be like the hot take is predominant at the moment. You know, that's what gets the traffic and that sort of thing. And I don't think that's healthy in a way that we analyse and enjoy things. You know, the moment becomes about expressing anger or having to have something to say rather than to just enjoy the moment and then to look back and reflect and build and look at ways that you can improve. God, I sound like I'm in an office. Social media figures, though.
How dare.
So not only that, is that when you look at social media figures, we have to change how we analyse it. So I think there's a lot of focus now currently on just using like YouTube numbers to describe how valuable something is. And actually, we need to be looking at how something does on TikTok or something does on YouTube or something does on Instagram or Twitter, or generally where that content is put first is where it will generate the most kind of views or interactions and that sort of thing. So we have to change the way that we analyse that to match this fragmentation, this balkanisation as well. And I'm not really seeing that yet. So that's something we've got to change in how we do things. They're all just things to think about. I think we've seen this rapid kind of change led from just through the COVID era, really. That's changing how we do so many things and how we socially interact and how we consume our media. Which also leads to really silly figures when people can claim whatever they bloody well want. Right? So the CM Punk Roman Reigns thing did 50 million views online?
50. That was what the claim was.
Okay, but it did 2.5 million views on YouTube. So this is that thing about, so if we're just going to use YouTube, as most analysts do, and people like to, wrestlers like to post the YouTube numbers at the end of the year, or talk about how many views they get on YouTube. Well, if that's 2.5 million, where were the other,
57.5 million?
Yeah, exactly, right? It was an interesting claim, wasn't it? Considering that they claimed that The Rock was like 175, and it's like, well, you've made him a third of The Rock. Well done. That's how he spent his whole career.
The 50 million number is as accurate as the Punk's getting a new contract extension any day now. So,
Any day.
Any fucking day now, that contract
the whole idea
of
putting that out there was to kind of reduce the effect of the Costco guys. So we are competing. CM Punk is competing for social media views with the Rizzler.
The Costco guys with the Rizzler.
I don't even know what a Rizzler is, right? I'm not being angry about... No, you don't have to tell me. I don't need to know. I know.
No, I didn't know what it was either. And I was sort of like, is this it? Last night I was like, wait, what else happens? What else does he do? And they were like, no, that's it. I'm like, that's it?
Like they do a little dance or something.
No, he just goes like this. I'm stroking my cheek and I'm stroking my that's it. He's an 8-year-old that does that. I'm like, wow, good for him. Like,
no,
that's cool.
I'm too old for TikTok. This is why I do Instagram. Oh my God. Okay, so he's competing with the Rizzler for social media views, which in essence is often a platform that isn't generating things in real life. So you'll see people generate like 20 million views on a music video and then they can't fill 100 people in a club, to watch a band play. And we're going to promote this. Now, the thing around this whole Costco thing, I don't really care because I just skip it because I understand what it is. And AEW have had an issue with getting press, especially post the CM Punk ESPN nonsense. And this is a way to them to get their name out and a brand to a casual market. Will it create this huge interest in the product? No, of course it won't. But they've been unsuccessful in many of their other attempts, so I don't care. I don't have to watch it. I can skip it. I did skip it. Like, I heard it was fun. Great. It's not for me. I do not care, but it's not going to affect me otherwise either. Do I think that they should use them things to then not just take Tony Khan out, but get over your stories? I don't think we see enough media from Orange Cassidy this week and John Moxley and other people that were involved in main matches. Yes, I do think they miss an opportunity with stuff like that. But none of this matters. What are we just claiming this bullshit for so we can claim this was the biggest thing of the week? Although I must admit, I did see a tweet that was like, New Japan have the return of Kenny Omega and WWE have the Bloodline and AEW have the Rizzler, and I cringed and went, oh, fuck.
Listen, all I'm going to say about this, I'm going to be the cattiest version of myself possible. If we were doing really good in ratings draws and we were doing really good as a ticket sale, then we probably wouldn't need to be pushing how great our merch sales are or how big our social media views are.
Oh, yeah, your YouTube numbers, which was 2.5 million of your 50.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you're doing that great and you're that, like, incredible, like, and you're that secure in what a big draw you are, like, you're not concerned about the Costco guys.
The Rizzler.
The Rizzler.
Do you know what a Rizzler is here? A Rizzler's like rolled up tobacco, like you get a thing and they roll up tobacco.
A Rizzler's not a thing here. It's just this one guy.
Okay. I don't know.
Riz is slang for being somebody being cool, like having charisma is what it comes from. So you have, so the kids, so I know this from small children I'm related to. If you have Max Riz, you're like, you look really good, you're really cool. Like, I have Max Riz. If you have Sigma Riz, you have the most Riz possible because Sigma means the most.
Okay.
Look at what I'm teaching. I'm learning.
You have Max Riz.
I have Max Riz right now.
I have never sounded older in my fucking life. You have Max Riz.
Max Riz.
Okay.
That's why his nickname is the Rizzler.
I thought it was like a baseball mascot or something. All right. Okay. All right. Moving on.
We have to call it. We can't go better than this. We're ending with the Rizzler and Max Riz.
Fucking Rizzler. All right. Okay.
Be gentle. He's 8 years old. He's a little tiny boy. I felt so bad for him.
I've got one other question, but we'll save that for next time. I like that question about music, and I've kind of dropped that on you without telling you, so we'll save that one. But this has been the return of the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast.
Triumphant.
Final Fantasy tune. I've had too much Lucasade today. If you're British, you'll know that you should never have too much of things. But there we are. You can find us over at the Social Suplex Network. Please listen to all our other great podcasts, including the fabulous Tunnel Talk and the wonderful Leah, who's let us go overtime. And I haven't even mentioned the Bucks got into the Hall of Fame. So that was going to be my bribery for letting us go over time. So yes, the Bucks got in the Hall of Fame. They should have gone in last year. They went in this year. They much deserved it. The results were very funny. It was a very Dragon Gate year, and response to them and the again thing of let's pick on a Japanese person because we want CM Punk to be in there was very funny too. Yeah. Grow up. But yeah, well done to the Bucks. They do deserve that recognition.
Yes.
They did change how we consume content and this company, and none of us would be talking about this if they weren't there. But yeah, very much thank you to Leah for all the hard work that you do. Please listen to Tunnel Talk. They are back this week too. We're all back from vacation.
Yeah. Look, Sunday they will have a new
episode. Here you go. I even used an American term. Back from vacation. Told you this is going to be like this. You listen to all the other great podcasts on your podcast app of choice from the Social Suplex team. I really do love our network. You can also buy merchandise from the Social Suplex Network over at chopped.tees. No, fucks. Yeah.
Chopped dash
tees. Dash. Yeah, hyphen. Chopped. Oh, fuck.
Chopped dash or hyphen.
I'm just reading it. I'm literally reading it.
I'm helping.
I'm not a professional. I'm not Jeremy. I can't do this like this.
No, Jeremy is very professional.
He does like the whole spiel, and I'm like, how are you doing that? Anyway,
he sounds good.
He does. Okay, he sounds good. But and you can get our Black Friday discounts on all Social Suplex merchandise over at chopped-tees.com// You say backward slash? Forward slash?
I would say backslash.
Okay, / for us, Trish and Sarah, / Trish and Sarah. That starts right after Dynamite on 12 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday the 27th and runs for the next 8 days. So if you do want to purchase anything, that's the time to do it. And do it now before any tariffs come in.
Oh, God.
So the things you got to get used to. You can also contact us if you wish. You can come in and visit us into the Discord. Come and control some of them. Yeah. Some of the mornings I wake up and I'm like, what the fuck are you lot doing? But hello. Yes, everyone that listens to our wonderful Discord. But yeah, you can come in and ask us questions. You can send me Naito abuse, send me Hiromu gifts. I don't know, send me anything, especially as we get nearer to the Japan season, because that's where I'm sat. You can also contact us by email at trishandsarah@gmail.com, trishandsarah@gmail.com, on Twitter at Trish and Sarah. Find Sarah at Sarah Graps. I am hidden because AI and private is unfortunately the way forward on Twitter. You can find us on Blue Sky.
Yeah.
Find us on Blue Sky. So under same names really. So yeah, come and find us on Blue Sky. Kind of enjoying some of the experience. I just like posting all my photos of trains. So if you like train photos or things at the back of train or snow, here we go. We'll try and use that a bit more. We need to sort out our account on there, actually, don't we?
I know. I
haven't done it.
Work through that.
Yeah, cool. So
I made a huge mistake.
Oh no, but it's some of the.
Fix it.
No, it's been so nice getting so many of the response and nice comments on there, and it's another medium that we can use to communicate with everybody. So please come and see us over there as well. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Back to regular scheduling. Obviously, a very busy time period coming up, and then. You'll be looking out for us in other places. We're making like a mini stop tour, aren't we, coming up this winter?
Yeah, you'll see me someplace else this week probably.
Yeah.
I'll tweet about it, Blue Sky about it.
Yeah, so look out for that. We're broadening our horizons. God knows why he wants to talk to us. I'm not even sure, but we'll see what we can do. So until then, thank you for coming back and listening to us after our little vacation. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. And this has been Trish.
And this has been Sarah.
And this has been the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast.